Ladies and gentlemen, if you have been listening to the podcast, you've probably heard me talk about my Helix Sleep mattress. As a matter of fact, I don't just have one. I just ordered one for my daughter, and they're the only mattress I have in my house. They are amazing. But Helix, well, they've left the bedroom and they've started making sofas. They just launched a new company called Allform, and they're already making some of the most killer sofas that I've ever seen. What makes it cool? Well, for starters, it's the easiest way you can customize a sofa using premium materials at a fraction of the cost of traditional stores. You get to pick your fabric, and it's going to be spill, stain, and scratch resistant, the color of the legs, the sofa size, and the shape to make sure it's perfect for your home. They've got armchairs, love seats, all the way to an 8-person or 8-seat sectional, something for everybody. They're delivered directly to your home. Fast, free shipping. And in the past, if you ordered a sofa, it could take weeks or even months, and you would need someone to come and assemble it in your home. Allform takes 3 to 7 days to arrive in the mail, and you can assemble it yourself in a few minutes. No tools needed. I went through this process. It couldn't be easier. I have an Allform sofa. It's a 5-person sectional with a chase lounger on each side. And one of the things I loved most about this is I got to totally customize it on the website. It couldn't be easier. You pick out the base model that you want to. You pick out the fabric. You pick out the colors. And boom, that sucker shows up at your house. If this sounds like something you might be interested in, but you're worried about not being able to try it out in a store, don't need to worry. You get 100 days to decide if you want to keep it, and that's more than 3 months. And if you don't love it, they'll pick it up for free and give you a full refund. They even offer a forever warranty, literally forever. So if you want to find your perfect sofa, check out allform.com/clearedhot. Allform is offering 20% off of all orders for the listeners at allform.com/clearedhot. This episode is also brought to you by Ladder Life Insurance. And if I'm being totally honest, life insurance is not something that I thought about until very recently. I'm a father with 3 kids. I couldn't love my children anymore. And if I look back on my life, I participated in some relatively high-risk activities. And I can't even imagine, nor did I spend time thinking about how catastrophic that might be. One of those activities took my life and left my kids on their own. Fortunately, Ladder Life Insurance is here to help not only me out, but you out. They make it quick and easy to get covered for life insurance. You just log in with your phone or your laptop and you apply. And within only a few minutes, you'll find out instantly if you're approved. And after that, you can decide whether or not to move forward. The plans are offered at a personalized rate that can flex as your needs change. Prices are affordable, there are no hidden fees, and you can cancel at any time. Since life insurance costs more as you age, right now is the time for you to cross it off of your list. If this sounds like something that might be of value to your life or loved ones, check out Ladder today to see if you're instantly approved. Go to ladderlife.com/clearedhot. That is LADDER life.com/clearedhot. Take the easy step today to protect those that you care for and love. This episode is also brought to you by my number one go-to cheat meal/evening snack, Magic Spoon. When I was growing up, I loved cereal. Actually, I still love cereal right now, but I don't like how traditional cereal makes me feel. Too many carbs, too much sugar, and I really don't need another unhealthy food choice in my life. I've tried drinking protein shakes and powders. For me, honestly, liquid calories, they just don't really do it. Fortunately, there is Magic Spoon that has amazing flavors that you're going to love, but without all the bad stuff. Now, Magic Spoon has released a brand new variety pack, which is featuring peanut butter. They released peanut butter as a limited edition in 2020, and it sold out 3 times. Peanut butter has gotten so much love that they decided to keep it permanent and add it to the bestseller variety pack, which also includes Frosty, Fruity, and Cocoa. I recommend mixing cocoa and peanut butter. 0 sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving. 140 calories per serving. Keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, low-carb, and GMO-free. I have quite a few friends in the Valley, and when I go over to their house, they have Magic Spoon on the counter. And you know what they all say to me? They say, "This is your fault." They're addicted in a good way because it's amazing. So go to magicspoon.com/clearedhot to grab a variety pack and try it today. And be sure to use the promo code CLEAREDHOT at checkout to save $5 off your order. Magic Spoon is so confident in their product. It's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. If you don't like it, send it back. They'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember, get your next delicious bowl of guilt-free cereal at magicspoon.com/clearedhot and use the code CLEAREDHOT to save $5 off. This episode is also brought to you by BetterHelp. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but for me, at times in my life, there have been things that have interfered with not only my happiness, but my ability to achieve my goals. BetterHelp is here to help you if that sounds like something you're dealing with. BetterHelp will assess your needs and will match you with your own licensed professional therapist, and you can start communicating in under 48 hours. It's not a crisis line and it's not self-help. It is professional counseling done securely online. There's a broad range of expertise available, which you may not be able to source if you live in a remote area. The service is available for clients worldwide, and you can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. They will respond in a timely manner, and if you want to, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so you won't ever have to sit in a waiting room again if that makes you uncomfortable. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if you need to. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Visit betterhelp.com/clearedhot. That is better, H-E-L-P, and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. Special offer for the podcast listeners, 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/clearedhot. This episode is also brought to you by Honey, which, again, if I'm being honest, is a service that I didn't ever think I would really want or need, but it is a browser extension, and it allows me to think less when I am shopping online, which I do more now than I do in person. Honey is here to make at least one aspect of your life a lot less complicated, and that is saving money. It's very simple. You add Honey to your computer for free and shop on lots of your favorite websites just like you normally do. If Honey finds a coupon, it will automatically tell you, applying the correct codes and dropping the price in a flash. It's so simple. So you add that extension. I've had it pop up when I was looking at footwear, clothing, jacket, hats, fill in the blank. On some websites, it'll find a coupon, and others it doesn't, but it doesn't change your shopping experience. There's no thinking, no remembering, no searching, just blissful automation. It's already found over 1 billion in savings automatically. It's literally a no-brainer, and in just a few seconds, you could have one less thing to worry about. So what are you waiting for? Try Honey today at joinhoney.com/clearedhot. That's joinhoney.com/clearedhot. And that is it for the business side of the house. My guest today is longtime friend and author Jack Carr. He and I started our military career, not together like in exactly the same place, but we found our way to the same BUDS class in early 1997. He did more time in the military than I did. He had a different experience than I did. We both spent time as enlisted and then officers in the SEAL community. And since leaving the SEAL community, he has dove headfirst into one of his childhood dreams and passions, that is writing. He is the author of the James Reece series. His fourth book, The Devil's Hand, is getting ready to come out next month. I've read all three. I now have a copy of his newest, the fourth. I'm going to read that as well. He's a fantastic author. I love his writing style. It's fiction matched with an amazing level of authenticity and specifics. And on that note, let's get into episode 173 with author and Renaissance man Jack Carr.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun run, north or south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. Get cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
Are you ready?
Let's do this.
I'm a little sore. I'm not gonna...
Why?
Rough.
Well, for those that weren't with us
Rough
last
few
night,
hours yesterday.
Yeah. Andy rolled for 2 hours before I got here because I missed my flight. If anybody's going through Salt Lake Airport, by the way, the B gate isn't right after the A gate, like in the alphabet. Like that's A, and then there's a few X's. It takes a while to get there. So
pre-pandemic, I think we both probably traveled a ton.
Yeah.
Salt Lake is my jam, right? I've flown on Delta for, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
I knew Salt Lake City Airport like the back of my hand. People would text me, where should I eat at the Salt Lake City Airport? And I would give them a list of go to this gate, this gate, this gate, or this gate.
Yeah.
And now I landed there, not post-pandemic because I believe we're still in the pandemic,
Yeah.
but get there, and it's like, where am I?
Yeah, they did right around pandemic time. They did that. They finished up the full on revamp of that airport, and it is different now. So
it's nicer.
Anybody going to B Gate? It takes a while to get there.
It is a legitimate 1 mile walk.
Yeah, it's serious. It's serious. And I was strolling along, doing my thing, figuring I just there we go, and then it kept going and going and going, and then I got to the gate and the door was closed, and so I texted Andy and said that I'll be up in a few hours later.
So I thought to myself, well, I guess I'll just go to class So I did roll for 2 hours before you got here.
That's what I mean. So instead of me landing and us going to do a podcast, you rolled for 2 hours, then picked me up, then went back, and then it's not called a test. I was told that it's not a test.
It's
a celebration.
It an Ironman.
Yes, it's a celebration of you getting your purple belt.
Indeed.
Which was amazing. And you rolled for 2.5 hours, I think it was, and that was incredible. Like, you crushed. It was amazing. But that's 4.5 hours.
Not from my perspective. From getting crushed on the bottom by people later on in that, it's not amazing.
Well, you start at the lower belt ranks, right? And then you work your way up to lead instructor, professor, and then he humbles you, and you have a little role. But,
yes.
Something along those lines.
The humbling begins about halfway through all of those people. No, it's not a jiu-jitsu tradition, and I'm stealing Travis's words at this point. It is an SBG tradition.
Okay.
So as you are... how do you describe it? Ascending the belt tree, if you will.
There you go.
When you get your next belt, it is not a test because they make the decision whether or not to give you the belt long before because they have to order them and they embroider them. So it's not.
I saw that your name's nice on there. You know?
So it's something they put
spelled correctly.
It is spelled correctly. STUMPF.
For those wondering.
H would be the most common misspelling of that. S is another one. T is one that's been on there. And
I did notice immediately they got it right. And,
well, I've been going there for like 2+ years now, so I hope they at least know who I am.
Well, my friend, I say his name, first name is Sean, but he did, I think, 13 years in the military, left from the command that you finished up at, where you got wounded. And after all those years, misspelling last name.
That, I think, is generally from the makers of the plaque, not the people that he worked with.
I don't know.
Or...
intentional?
It could be high-level trolling.
It could be.
Because if I'm being honest, I would do that. That's amazing.
I know if I was in charge of your plaque, it would have a PH.
Yeah.
But
thank you for your service, and here's a plaque that's misspelled. We really appreciated your input.
Yeah.
I'd be like, motherfuckers.
Yeah, and that's not the only time that's happened. But yeah, you should be sore today because, 4.5 hours of rolling. And I feel honored that you asked me to come up to do this last night because the last time we did this was in August of 2019.
And I got my blue belt.
And you got your blue belt. So, if one was wondering, they might be able to connect the dots and think that you might need me here for these. I mean, kind of like in Buds, kind of like in Buds.
Or we could realize that it was completely random. First off, we started off in Buds together. Let's remember who graduated first. So how did I need you again?
And so,
like I said,
about halfway through Buds, I thought, you know what? Andy's going to need to do this on his own someday.
Oh, you were just mentoring me.
So I'd let you continue forward, give you that confidence, and allow you to grow. So you're welcome.
I can't thank you enough for that mentorship. I probably wouldn't have been able to make it through the hardest Buds class known to man without your assistance.
You're welcome.
Notice that you weren't in it, but
we can go ahead and schedule the brown belt time right now. So
I want to take a few days off.
Let's do it I think you need to get your brown belt in March, April of next year. So if you could just get that scheduled, then that's when the next book will be coming out, and we'll do this again.
So I'll let you take that up with Travis because I'm not sure how that works. And I really don't feel like doing another Ironman for a while.
Yeah.
Because like I was explaining, you line everybody up and you go white belt all the way to black. I don't know how many people were there. There was probably 40 or 50 people. Yeah. Hard to say. And halfway through it, what I will say is I had a higher expectation for myself than what played itself out. It might have looked from the outside like it was looking okay, but from the bottom, which is where I was fighting myself about halfway through that, you start off with energy, right? You're fresh, and then an hour into it, people have been sitting on the wall for an hour, and they're just like, "Hey, I feel pretty good. You look like you feel not so good.
Yeah,
let's party."
Yeah. No, I'll tell you what. When we were in Buds, I thought back to the times that I did jiu-jitsu when they did that exact thing. Not as many people. Yep. It was like 6 or 7 people that would just rotate through. So one would go, and then they'd get back to the line, and they'd rest until the next guy, and they'd just keep rolling through, and you'd be the only person out there that would roll continuously. And I thought about that a lot when we were going through. I'd be like, that was tough. You know, being there and being the only guy that's rolling and having all these people come through, get a rest, and cycle back through to push you. I thought about that a lot, and I was like, you know what, just running with this boat thing on my head, that's not as difficult as what I did there or in the ring. I thought back to boxing. I thought back to the jiu-jitsu and thought, you know what, this isn't as bad as that.
That brings up an interesting point, because I will get questions often from people who, for whatever reason, they either didn't take the opportunity to go into the military, their life circumstances changed, they got married, they had a kid, but they have a feeling of I guess it would be regret of having not been able to test themselves. Most of the time I get the emails is from people who want to be or had wanted to be a SEAL, obviously given the background. And they will ask me, how can they push themselves? How can I replicate that level of difficulty and challenge? Because I don't know if people realize this, BUD/S is not the most difficult thing on the face of the planet. There are many ways to challenge yourself, but it's amazing how it is viewed as this crucible above all crucibles. And having gone through a harder class than you and actually making it through training in one
tell me about that.
Sequential class, as opposed to having to be rolled back due to weak genetics.
Once again, you're welcome.
Yeah, well, again, your genetics, if they were tougher, you could have graduated with me in my class. Well, it wasn't my class. I was a part of the class, but
It was your class.
What would you recommend for people? Because for me, last night is different than BUD/S, because I know that evolution that I did last night, maybe I was looking at the clock from time to time. Like maybe I got an hour this left. BUD/S is a 6-month sandpaper grind.
Yeah. No, it's definitely different. And I thought of being in the ring or on the mat in terms of perspective, really. But BUD/S is different in that there is this pressure of not letting your team down, not letting your family down, not letting your friends down, not letting yourself down.
It's a lot of expectations.
That's a lot, and all of these eyeballs are on you, not just from the instructor staff, but from the people that are going to be your teammates in the future, because you're building that reputation based on your character and how you interact with people and what you do and how you put out in these situations. So,
are you saying your peers are watching you and
always watching, but
silently judging, but also sometimes not very silently judging?
Exactly.
Think about it, though. Did you ever work with anybody who came... Reputations are huge, in my opinion, in the SEAL community.
That's the currency.
It is the currency, and not all are great. There were people that I worked with who had a bad reputation starting at BUD/S.
Yep.
And I'm going to describe it as a tough road to hoe for them in the community.
This is true. That sticks with you.
They were deep. Maybe their eyes were above the trench that they had dug for themselves. Some of them continued digging with the shovel and wondered, why am I getting deeper in this hole? Others, I did see turnarounds as well.
Too. Yeah.
But that reputation, man.
It starts back then, and they tell you that. They tell you that first day. That this is the reputation that you build here, your interactions here, will follow you into the teams. And it's true. And some guys, I did see that. And one person in particular stands out in my mind of in BUD/S. If you asked everybody in the class who you don't want to go in a platoon with, it would be this guy.
Yeah, hated him.
Yeah, and then we got to the team, and he crushed. It was so totally different. It totally turned it all around.
Was he a young guy at that time?
Not really, no.
Oh, interesting, because I would imagine it might have been somebody who just needed to find themselves a little bit later on.
Yeah, no, the person I'm thinking about, not, but we're all young back then. So yes, I guess in general.
How old
younger,
were you?
23, I think, 22, 23.
You were an old man.
So
I was 18.
I know. You were the youngest guy in the class.
I was.
Yeah, I wonder if there's anybody...
And most handsome, I've been told. I'm not sure. I mean, I've just
Can't
heard
confirm
that a
that?
lot.
Can't confirm.
I've heard it a lot from many people.
Well, then
who weren't in the class. So it's...
Then I think you should definitely believe that. Run with it, for sure. I won't... Yeah. No, you were the youngest guy in our class, I know. I wonder if there was anybody that's ever gone through when they're 17, sign that paperwork and somehow... I don't know, go to boot camp, and by the end of the fall or something, they start BUD/S at 17. I don't know. Maybe back
if
in
somebody
back
had
in
the
old
chance
day.
to do that, would you recommend that they do? Because I honestly would now lean on maybe give it a little bit more time.
Yeah.
You need some maturity. And I say this as a 43-year-old man who is not mature by any shape or form.
You've come a long way.
I was physically 18 in BUD/S and emotionally 12. I'm physically 43 and emotionally 12 and a half.
Oh, stop it! You've come a long way. I've been along for this journey. It's been great to see.
Yeah.
But no, everybody takes a different path, and for some kids coming out of high school, 18, just wanting to crush, like that's their path, and that's the right thing for them to do. Other people, maybe they need a little more time to train. Like that's how I looked at it. I needed a little more time because no internet. all I'm doing is reading these books back
Yeah.
from the 80s and some and more as we got into the 90s, watching a couple of those videos that showed people climbing the ropes and running and all that sort of thing. And so I just wanted to take that time. I was really into martial arts. I was into rolling early in jiu-jitsu. I was into boxing. I was into all that sort of thing. And I wanted to get those skills to a level where I was like, okay, now I'm at that level where I can jump into this thing more so than I would have at 18. But who knows? You know, once you get there, you're going to get in good shape. Like that's the thing. Like any average high school athlete can do this. It's all here. And when you get there, those first 2 weeks of what we had is PTRR. I don't know what they call it now.
Fourth phase,
But
I
yeah,
believe.
something like that. You run in the soft sand a lot, and that's going to build up your muscles and your legs, and you're going to learn how to do the techniques on this obstacle course, and you're going to figure out this combat side stroke, and you're going to get in shape in those first couple weeks. So if you're not in the greatest shape when you get there, maybe it'll be a little tougher physically, but that's not the, as we know, that's not the hard part.
Well, think about the pipeline now. The pipeline that we went through was like, hey, here I am at Buds. Now they have the boot camp divisions that are specifically designed for, and I might be saying this a little bit off, but I think it's the Diver, SWIC, SEAL pipeline. They stay together. They go to the Great Lakes course. They get a 14-weeker leading up to that, taking all those physical tests, getting into shape. Then I think they still have PTRR. What does that stand for? Physical Training, Rest, and Recovery, because that's where the rollbacks would go.
Wow.
I pulled that shit
Wow,
directly
that's
out
impressive.
of the ether.
That's amazing.
It's only been 20-plus years. I think they call it fourth phase now. But people, they go through that whole extended pipeline, and the attrition rate is
Stays
still
the same.
the same. People
love
do
it.
not believe me that when I just gave a speech in Texas, and I hate PowerPoints. However, I use one, but I put a picture up of people doing a boat crew race in Hell Week, because to me, it's one of the most physically, it's one of the most powerful physical expressions of leadership, because we had leaders in our class. 212, and I think we discussed this a little bit the last time, that the instructor staff didn't really like.
Oh, nor did the students.
Nor did the students. But right when the boats are on the heads, and that leader that you absolutely hate is asking you to do something, like, they won't do it. They'd rather get physically punished than work for that leader. And then you give them somebody that they really want to work with, and like, well, how did your boat crew go from nearly last to crushing?
Oh.
And I talk about that picture, though. Like, listen, if you can make it to this picture, it's probably Monday morning of Hell Week, midday maybe.
So you're fresh. You're still fresh. Feeling good.
Ish. I'm going to throw an ish on that. But let's just if you can make it to day one of Buds, would you not agree that you physically have the ability to graduate? Because you've been tested. You've done the physical screening test. You're not like doing 1 rep max deadlifts in training. I mean, let's look at the tools that we had. Water was the number one tool as the instructor. Sand,
Cold.
telephone pole, and boats, obstacle course, and the physical evolutions that they had to do. But you had to take tests to even get to a place where we could apply that curriculum. And I tell people, it is physically demanding. I don't think it's fair to say that it's not physically difficult. But the people that I remember quitting, it wasn't because they were failing from a contractile potential.
Oh no. Like we had some serious people in our class that were strong. They were fast. They were loud. Remember that one guy that was like super loud that gave us right before Hell Week, he gave us a speech.
I mean,
like
the first guy that bailed in Hell Week, and it started that cacophony of the ringing. Remember how many
Loved
people?
it.
Do you remember how many people though quit when he did?
Yeah, there was quite a few.
Yeah,
and I remember in the surf zone they were left in, and some people were like, "Come back." And I was like, like that's the
Don't
program
come back.
working. Yeah, that's the program working. So that was great. I distinctly remember that because I remember seeing that particular person when we first got there, and he was big, strong. He climbed those ropes and all that.
Roll back.
Man, yeah.
He had
so
all
knew
the guidance,
everything,
all the advice.
Exactly.
Do this in Hell Week. Do that in Hell Week.
Right. You didn't know then. You didn't even. There's no internet.
Yeah.
You couldn't research any of this stuff. Couldn't fact check anyone. But yeah, first hour, 2 hours, whatever it was of Hell Week, and he gets up out of that surf zone and goes to ring the bell, and which is in the trailer hitch now, so it's within sight of everybody for the whole
Needs
week.
to be there
It's
at all
fantastic.
times.
I love it. Absolutely. And that's the program working. But I saw that, I'm like, yes, that's the program working. All that stuff that I read, all those things that I watched, and the things kind of people had told us of hey, you're going to see the fastest guys quit, you're going to see the strongest guys quit, you're going to see the loudest guys quit. It played out, and it's true.
And for those who, let's say we had to go to Vegas and you had to put money on somebody in our class to make it through, people from an outside perspective probably would have put the cash on the person that was boisterous, that was vocal. I mean, I remember him giving, like, we were eating fucking MREs before Hell Week, and he's sitting there talking about, hey, at this evolution, focus on this, and this is what you need to do to get here. And that son of a bitch had smoke coming off of his boots to the bell.
Ding, ding.
And then the people who crumbled because he crumbled. Very interesting.
Yeah, that's great. But that's the program working.
We've been at it for 2 hours, you think?
Ish, yeah, right around then, maybe even less, but somewhere in there, about 2 hours. And it's cold, and the
not
waves
as cold
are
as it
coming
was going to
in,
be.
and- No,
I mean,
still earlier in the evening. Your body's still, hasn't started to shut down yet. And he's like, I've had it. This is it. I'm done.
sayonara,
So great.
cock bag.
Exactly. See ya. No, I love that. I love that. But yeah, and I also love the fact that you have all these senior level leaders that put money into all these different contracts and all these different studies to try to figure out how do we get the right person in the front door so we have more of them coming out the back, and we can make this attrition go down a little bit, and let's invest all these millions of dollars in this Great Lakes program where we teach them about leadership, we teach them how to climb these ropes, about resiliency, we teach them about nutrition, we do all this stuff to prepare them for buds, and then we still get 80% attrition, and I love it. I absolutely love it, because these guys at these good idea fairies up there, you want to test, because you're testing for grit, you're testing for an intangible that you can't just by looking at somebody or having, hey, fill out this bubble chart here. Look at this. So we paid a company millions so they could tell us what bubbles people fill in. That will show them and say they have the attributes that we're looking for in the SEAL teams.
Maybe.
Quit. Ding, ding, ding. But there's never any accountability for that. It's good. It's good to always explore and try to improve and all that stuff. But at the same time, I still think there's something about just that visceral type of training that hasn't changed since the beginning of time. Like, you're still going to put out physically. You're still going to get yelled at. You're still going to get told you're nothing and you shouldn't be here and do all those things that militaries have been doing since the beginning of time. And to change that or try to handhold somebody through that process, I don't know. Not really a fan.
I'd rather see them focus on the energy up front than modifying the standard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have no issue with them. Those charts and stuff, I think the best it can give them is a trend or an indicator, and I have no problem with them dedicating some time to try to find the right people.
But I love that it hasn't worked. I guess that's my point, is that I always want to improve, always want to do that, but then I see these guys that get kind of elitist about it, I guess maybe I'm thinking of one person in particular, that's possible as well, that are kind of elitist about these things, like they have this wonderful idea and they're going to change this program and they're going to do all these things. And 80% attrition, buddy, because you're testing for grit and you don't know. But for me, if we're going to invest money in something, or the military in general, particularly in the special operations side of the house, it shouldn't be not how do we get more people through and figure out these attributes that we're looking for, this resiliency and this team ability and all those sorts of things. It's really that character side of the house. Like, if you want to try to figure out who should be coming in here that might make it through based on this intangible called grit, how about the character side of the house that you maybe already have from your upbringing, from your parents, or just innate in you from birth? Like, who knows? Doesn't matter. But testing for those things, like, it might be super fast, might be super strong, but you could also be like the other guy in our buds class that went out and chopped somebody up, like we talked about last time, and is in prison for life.
You can look him up. Like, I don't want to use names, but it's Ben Seifert, and he was the
his
honor
initials.
Man. He was the honor man of our buds class. Do a quick Google. He's on the East Coast in prison. I think he and his wife are up for their first parole hearing shortly.
Yeah,
he was a touch off.
Yeah, no, he was definitely a touch off, but honor man.
Correct.
Of buds class,
but also lacking some honor. Because the honor man,
looking back,
the honor man, if I remember correctly, was selected more on your statistical rate of passing the evolutions than more. I mean, and I know this as an instructor, you don't get to know the students that well. You're there to apply the curriculum. Mm-hmm. So I can look at a spreadsheet and see the pass-fail rate of everybody, and the guy at the top, it's like, okay, we're going to present you with this plaque, and you get to give a stupid speech at the age of 19. You can call yourself the honor man, but it's not really a metric of honor. Yeah.
No, the name doesn't really kind of delineate what it's really, what that getting that honor means. But the Israelis do it. The one thing I regret about my time in the SEAL teams is I never got to go to Israel. And we sent some guys over.
I hosted them on the East Coast, but I never got the chance to go over as well.
That would have been cool to see how they do it over there, see their training, see what kind of setup they have, see their base, like do all that. I would have loved to have done that. And we sent some guys over from Buds when I was when I was on my way out and doing the operations officer thing there. We sent some first phase instructors, I think, went over there and saw what they were doing, and they test for character. That's the point. They test for character, and they have data points. They do a few things. I think one of them was they hand people, hey, they have these paddles during Hell Week, just like we do, and they say, hey, dig a huge foxhole for the team and dig a one for yourself. And they see, Wednesday nights your head's getting a little crazy or whatever, and then they see who goes and starts digging the team one and who goes and digs their own.
And then maybe
they're
gets in it.
Data point. Yeah, exactly. It curls up.
Yeah.
So data point, not necessarily that person's going to get kicked out, but it's like, okay, data point. Another one they do, I think it's like Thursday night or something of their Hell Week. They have a 10-mile run or something like that, and you have a ruck on your back. It has to have 40 pounds of sand in it, but they make it very easy to dump that sand out like right before, because it's all along the beach or something like that. And then you can fill it up before you check in at the end. And then you get to the end and they have cameras up and they're looking, I guess. And then they ask you, hey, did you dump sand out of your pack? And what's important isn't if you did or you didn't. It's how you
you're
answer.
honest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if they have, here's a photo of you dumping your sand out and you say you didn't, so that's another data point. So
that's
they
when
do
you
some of
immediately
that
go
sort of thing.
to, that's obviously not me.
Yeah. Counter
If you're wrong,
accusations.
yeah, but like
admit
that's
nothing, deny anything, everything.
That's
counter
not me.
accusations.
That might look like me, but that's not me.
Here's your signature on the receipt.
Somebody obviously forged that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Those tests are amazing, and I think, if you had to define what the BUDS curriculum actually is, I think you're correct. It's testing for character and grit, and you do that by physically suppressing human beings to their lowest point, and then you watch their behavior. Because there were certainly people who cared more about themselves than the people around them, and it's so easy to do when you feel great, right? That everybody wants to be a frogman on Friday.
That's it.
Go team, yay!
Yeah.
Wednesday night of Hell Week, where you're absolutely hypothermic to the point you can't stand up straight because your hip flexors are seized from shivering.
Yeah.
And they give you a choice between a group task or individually taking care of yourself. It's like, ooh, let's party.
Yeah, so those things I think are probably where money is better spent rather than paying these companies with psychologists and all this other things, millions of dollars to figure out, hey, let's teach these kids let's bring somebody in to talk about leadership, Okay. Yeah.
Who has a doctorate in academic leadership? Yeah, I don't know.
Whatever.
What was the hardest evolution in BUDS for you?
Swimming.
Maybe swimming. How about Hell Week
general.
specifically?
That was just a grind. I don't remember there being a hardest part of it.
Do you remember much of it?
I remember, I remember the evolutions. I remember like when we won a race and getting to sit there for 2 minutes without getting yelled at.
It's like, this is the best.
So I remember that. I think I remember most of the evolutions, but I did have a hallucination when you paddle around the island that Thursday night
around the world.
Yeah, so I remember seeing a warehouse rise out of the ocean with Poseidon coming out over the top of it. So that was kind of cool, but it was only for a second. It wasn't like the whole race. I was just like, hey, does anybody else see that warehouse that just came out of the ocean? Nobody did. But yeah, I don't think I had a hardest one in Hell Week. The whole thing was just hard and a grind, and you gotta keep charging. But in general, it was the swims because I didn't know what a combat side stroke was. I saw it on some of these videos, but I'd never really done it ahead of time, and no one taught us how to do it. They just said get in and do it. Now they teach them how. Now at Great Lakes, they're like learning how to do the right things and how to do all that. It was just baptism by fire, so it was very difficult for me. And then one guy taught me how to do it, like halfway through first phase or near the end of first phase, took me aside afterward. We went out to the ocean and he taught me he was a water polo player. So he was good in the water.
Probably a life-changing moment for you.
Yeah. I was like, oh, amazing. Like, this isn't as hard as I've been, because I was just putting out in the water and it was just exhausting, just barely making it.
It doesn't work with swimming. You can actually exert all of your energy, but if you're not efficient, it doesn't matter.
I was probably going like this. My swims were probably like twice as long, because the guiding wasn't very good. And I was trying to line up things on the shore. You put those two houses or lights or whatever it is, and then wait, which one is that again? Oh, dang it. Yeah. But once he taught me how to do the stroke, I went from being like third to last to, I remember that the first one I did after that, I was third. I was like, no way. Like, that was crazy. And I dropped down a little bit after that, but was still up there near the top. So that was good.
Damn, man.
That was good. But up until that point, like, if no one had taught me, took me aside, that would have been a rough next few months. And there was one guy that did it. Yeah, one guy. And it totally changed my BUDS experience. But other than that, I didn't like taking my boots on and off. So
in Hell Week at the med checks, you mean?
Med checks anywhere. So like when we run to the pool, you got to take your boots off. You got to get in the water, you do your thing, and then everybody's yelling at you to put your stuff on, and you're trying to line up and run to the next evolution. But I just remember the boots and socks, putting these things. So I went to flip flops after that until we moved to the mountains here in Park City and just stayed in flip-flops for the next 20 years because you don't have to take your boots on and off. But I, for whatever reason, it sounds odd, but I distinctly remember not liking putting my boots on and off multiple times throughout the day.
I remember very little about Hell Week.
Yeah.
I have a gross memory of some of the evolutions, like Steel Pier. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Those caterpillar races where you're like
In the mud.
but then also we were over at NAB, like in the water, and you had to link legs and like you were doing these like rowing races in the water.
Just trying to keep you up at that point. But it's surprising to me that with all that money we just talked about, them investing in the front end of this program, that they haven't tried to recreate the mud flats by Tijuana, like in a different
In
area.
a sanitary environment?
Yeah, without the sewage part. Like it seems like we could just like get some mud from somewhere and put some water in it that isn't down on
How
the
about
border.
the demo pit?
And
You
that's
think that thing gets
disgusting.
cleaned?
But it's better than the Tijuana
Mud flats.
And yeah, because so for those that don't know, you run with the boats on your head down to Tijuana. I don't know how long far they're right on the
Not
border.
actually to Tijuana.
To the border.
That would be
to
illegal.
The border. And then once before you cross that border, you all stop. And there's some like mud pits or mud flats out there, but it's really the sewage from Mexico and probably runoff from everywhere else just coming into this area, and it smells like sewage. And you're in there, and now you're on, I forget what day it was. It's like Tuesday.
It's Thursday, I think.
It's Thursday? Oh, geez. Well, I was a little off. Whatever day it is, like your body's already started to just shut down, essentially. So you have some cuts on you, you have some scrapes on you, that sort of thing. And of course, you're getting it in your mouth, and your body just can't fight off all this. So people get pretty sick.
Well, and let's not forget that the tasking from the instructors is often go cover every inch of your body.
Oh, yeah.
And by that we mean in your ear holes.
Disgusting.
You
Disgusting.
are literally painting it on your buddies because you have to go back and get inspected afterwards. And if you fail it, wet and sandy, right, which is you don't want to do because you're freezing cold at that point in time.
And then you have these races, those same races you talked about.
Yeah.
You're in the mud pits doing those kind of races. So you're like breathing it in, you're just getting it in your mouth. You're like, it's disgusting. It's in your eyes.
It's a nice coat of human shit is what I would describe it as.
Exactly.
A nice sheen, a patina, if you will.
Right. So of all these things that they do, like I think we could bring some mud in from somewhere else and just put it in a place and wet it down a little bit instead of like actually going to sewage.
Bring in some spa mud.
Gross.
You know, I've never done a mud treatment at a
Good
spa,
point.
but maybe we could buy a metric
Good
ton of
point.
that.
And that would probably be a lot less expensive than some of these people we pay to fill in these dots to figure out who's the most resilient person that we should have coming into the front part of this program. Just get some mud from somewhere else without the sewage in it.
You and I had to cover ourselves in human shit. I want everybody else who goes to that program to have to do it
Good
too.
point. Never mind. I take back everything I said. It's a rite of passage. If we had to do it, everybody else has to do it too. Dang
Correct. What are your thoughts on the military being used as a social experiment?
it. Yeah. So that's
Some interesting things that have happened. Did you hear about the 6-week kind of stand down, all pause to address the extremism?
I did.
Thoughts on that? Did you ever?
did.
Do you feel like you encountered any of that while we were in? Because we were. When did you get out?
2016.
Okay, so we covered the same time period. What are your thoughts?
So we had safety stand downs, but it was because someone burned in, jumping or something
Or
happened.
maybe lost a M4 shape in the surf zone and we needed to go find it?
I don't know if that's a safety stand down. Was that a safety stand down?
There was no safety involved in that, but we surely stood down to go walk online through the surf to find that
some
bad
piece of
boy.
plastic?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no safety stand-downs. That's right. It would be.
It would be because something like you hear of it more often with pilots because there's it's like helicopter crash or
Catastrophic
something.
incident.
They have to do an investigation, and until that investigation is done, they're not sure what the cause of the crash was, so they need to find out. So planes are grounded, helicopters are grounded, airframes are grounded, depending what happened. And for us, more often than not, it was either something with boats or something with, as far as I remember anyway, was either something with boats or something with jumping.
Yep.
And you'd have maybe a day safety stand down, depending on what had happened, or if they're doing an investigation on somebody's jump rig, maybe it's a week, whatever it might be. And it might be just from doing those kind of activities. It might not be in general of stop everything. Although I do think we had like one or two stop everythings, and I forget what they were for, but I think they were more social realm, like guys did like some drug busts or something along those
There
lines.
were stand-downs for that, you're right, yeah.
Something like that. I mean, my memory's a little hazy, so I might be a little off, but in general, you'd have safety stand-downs. Never did we have one for this 6-week, month plus for a social type, I don't know, investigation. Is it a education? Is it and for those that were in the military, GMT, General Military Training, I can only imagine what kind of, I mean, it's awful. You just go through PowerPoint for the most part, and you just like, you can do it online, or sometimes they had speakers come in or whatever, and you had to be there, and you had to sign your name on a sheet, and then you tried to get out of there for the most part. So yeah, this is a different. It looks like a different animal, and of course, all I know it is from looking at the outside and looking at hearing it on the news.
Same here, and so I read it, and it seems to be, and I might be mischaracterizing it just a touch, but a 6-week time period to address extremism or attitudes of extremism inside of the military. And I did not experience that.
No.
And again, so we can only talk about the SEAL community.
Yeah, which is a very tiny, tiny portion of the military in general.
Correct.
But
what
yeah.
I will say, there were extreme. I guess it would depend on your definition of extremism. The people that we served with had some of the most extreme levels of desire to serve others that I've ever been around.
Yeah.
And extreme levels of selflessness and humility and a desire to make a difference and a desire to go places and do things that other people were either unwilling or unable to do. Mm-hmm. So if that's your definition, then yes, I was surrounded by that. But I don't ever remember any expression of extremism in the way that I think their definition may be.
Yeah, they're looking for, what are they looking at? It seems like it's attached to a certain political party and a certain...
It seems to be attached to politics in general.
Yeah. But it seems like, so it all stems out of January 6th, right? And extremism.
I believe so.
Ish around, and then moving into inauguration.
Or the
right?
perception that active duty military members were either implicitly or complicitly supporting that. And again, I'm not in anymore, so I can't speak to that. But and again, we can only really speak to the SEAL community, but I just never, even in my experiences with the Fleet Navy or the Marine Corps or the Army, I never got any touch of that. And I worry when they start messing around with the military. Did you see the new recommended reading from the
I did.
Chief of Naval Operations?
I saw.
Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I did see that. So reading lists have been an important part of, whether it's in the Marines where they pick one a year. I don't know if they still do this or not, but they used to pick one book a year. They'd have a bunch of different books on these reading lists for different ranks, actually, which I always thought was kind of elitist in and of itself, and a little, I don't know, they're like, hey, this is for the E1s, this is for the E5s, this is for that, I don't know.
Coloring book for the E1s and
I just didn't
Dr. Seuss, which he apparently is.
That's not on there anymore, so that's out. But so the Marines would choose one. My last reading list that I did this last month, I chose one of that 31st Commandant of the Marine Corps chose in the late 90s. Rifleman Dodd is the name of the book. But there's also a bunch of other ones in there. So I think this reading list that we're talking about now is, they had a couple of those books that were on a general reading list that were a little different than have been on there in the past.
Essentially
re-education books.
Socially based.
Yeah.
It
sounds good. It's tough because all these things sound great. You throw the word inclusive. That sounds good. That sounds wonderful. Of course we want to be inclusive. If you're a hard charger and want to crush things, like that's what we want in the SEAL teams. We want to include people that aren't going to, that don't make the cut. So it's a very strange phenomenon. I can only imagine what it's like to be in the military right now, in the SEAL teams right now, and having to deal with all these things that don't make you better at what you're supposed to be doing, which is being prepared for war. Like, that's your only job, is to be prepared for war. And when you go to war, you do that. Yeah. But being prepared for war is your personal and professional job for the time that you're in the military, or in the SEAL teams. We'll just keep it to what we know. Now they're not training for war. They're standing down for 6 weeks to read some books that aren't Dr. Seuss, and
it's two separate things though. There's the 6 week stand down, and then there's the new.
Then there's the reading list.
The reading list, which I don't know. I try to look at it in the bigger picture. The reality is that the SEAL teams, they do discriminate because
people that aren't fast, aren't strong, aren't motivated.
And then I was thinking about that. Is there an occupation in the world that doesn't discriminate? Like, not everybody can be a doctor, right? I don't want a doctor who failed out of high school, who couldn't make it through medical school. So there's standards for that. There's the MCATs, right? Is that discrimination because you can't reach that level? Job applications. We want references. If you get a bad reference and you don't hire somebody because of that, aren't we discriminating against that as well? I agree. I agree with the equality of opportunity. I want everybody to have the same opportunity, but I don't agree with equality of outcome.
Yeah, no, that's the whole thing, is this, that we have equal access to opportunity in this country. Now, what you decide to take advantage on is based off with the decisions that you make along the way. And guess what? In life, you have to live with the repercussions of your decisions. That's part of life, and learn from them and move forward.
I don't think you can say that in 2021.
Or you can wallow and
are in
talk
so
about
much trouble. Did you just say accountability and responsibility? Live with the consequences of your
Don't tell
actions.
anybody. Don't tell anybody. But that's what it is. It's equal access to opportunity. And there's not another country in this world that I know of anyway where you have as much access to opportunity as the next guy. The person born into wealth can screw it up here. And we see that all the time. And people that come from quote unquote nothing, which really isn't, anyway, that come from more humble means, I guess, humble backgrounds, have the opportunity to make decisions and improve and grow and do whatever. You have access to the opportunity based off the decisions that you make along the way. So there's not another country in the world that gives you that kind of access to opportunity. And now we're doing the opposite, it seems. Now we're giving this equity-based outcome type of a mindset to people coming up that feel entitled to certain things because they're being told from day one that equal means that we're all the same. Well,
We're not all the same.
That's not what it means.
Look at you and me.
That
I'm
does not
taller
mean
than you.
You're stronger. You're much better looking.
All of these things are objectively and factually true. But that's the thing. We're not all the same.
Yeah.
And we don't all come out of the box with the same ability.
And that's called life.
That is called life. And I don't So where do you think this path that we're on now leads?
That's a big question. That is a big question, especially for those of us with kids. I think about that all the time. Like, are they going to have that same access to opportunity now? Or now is everything going to be based, or more and more based off an equity of outcomes, which there's a great book, and it's so Kurt Vonnegut's Welcome to the Monkey House. And there's one, I think it's chapter 3 or 4 in there, but they're all short stories. And it's about a future where we have this equality of outcomes, this equity of outcomes. And the government actually zaps you if you start thinking a little bit outside the box or thinking about how you can improve. And it's told through the eyes of a couple sitting on a couch watching they're watching a dance thing, a ballerina thing, opera, whatever it is. I forget, it's been a while.
It's definitely not an opera,
but
it's
they're
a
watching
dance ballerina thing.
that sort of a thing.
Okay.
And they're all the same. There's no one that stands out. They're all bad. And
Equally. That's not the world I want to live in.
Yeah, no, that's not that's the opposite of what what brings most people to this country when they think of opportunity here, or what they used to think of opportunity here. I think anyway. That's why a lot of people were leaving the countries that they were in to come here for this access to opportunity based on their hard work. That's what it's all about.
I don't want to see anybody held back for what they believe in, the color of their skin, their gender. I don't want to see anybody held, because I think that shit's archaic, right? We are all different, but guess what? I actually really appreciate the differences in people. I think that's what makes our world and our country, I think it's what makes it amazing. However, if I give you the choice between a doctor that was at the top of his class or the bottom of his class, and you need to have brain surgery, which one are you picking?
Yeah.
Everybody's picking the one at the top. Yeah. You just discriminated, right? So, and again, I'm probably using that term broadly, but that's just the way that it is. I mean, again, I don't want to see...
That's the way you want it, because it's competition.
Like, I don't want to see anybody held back for the reasons that I said, and there's probably a lot more that I could add to that. But at the same time, not everybody has the same capability, and we need to have those standards. We can't modify those standards. The equality of outcome, being told that, we're all the same. We're not all the same, and that's okay. Being told that you can do anything that you want to in life, that's a great thing to say to your kids, but guess what? They can't.
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on
my sons are both going to top out at under 6 feet or maybe right at 6 feet. Sorry, you're not playing in the NBA.
Got it.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
It's not fair. It's not fair to them. They should be able to play in the NBA.
If they're good enough to play in the NBA, I would support that. They're going to get dunked on, though. If they played in the NBA, people would jump over their faces and smash the ball into the hoop. I don't know.
It's.
I'm worried about the path that we're on, and I don't know what it takes to course correct. One thing it does give me a little bit of hope is I think it's an incredibly vocal minority that's trying to drive it, and I think at some point it will reach a tipping point, and then the quiet majority, who I feel wants to live a fulfilling and peaceful life, wants to pursue the opportunities that are in front of them, are finally going to say, you guys can fuck right off.
Yeah, well,
then it's going to push back in the other direction. Problem being, then you have to unwind and find that homeostasis between those two extremes. All of this takes time.
Well, there's certain things we used to be able to rally around as Americans, and the First Amendment was one of those. And it seemed like growing up, that was one that we could agree on. Other ones, of course, there's all sorts of different opinions and legal opinions, personal opinions, all these other. But the First Amendment, number one, about having that freedom to express yourself without fear of getting locked up, is something that we're not on the same page with now. There are companies
very interesting.
that don't have to because they're private companies, but they are not acting in the spirit of the Second Amendment. And before coming
First
up
Amendment.
First Amendment. So, I mean, I always go to the side. I tend to go to the second a little
After the first, there is the second.
I go to the second pretty quick, by the way. If people that know me understand. But yeah, that was something that people would, they would, hey, we're here and we will fight for your right to express yourself, even if it is something we definitely do not agree with. And that's the test right there, is that you have to stand up for the person you viscerally disagree with. That's what the First Amendment's all about. And now we're not there. We have companies that have this incredible power because they control. They're not just wealthy. They're not wealthy beyond belief. They control the information, and they are quote unquote. Well, they're multi-national type companies really, but they're not acting in the spirit of the Second Amendment, which is a new thing. Sorry. Man, I just go right to that second.
We can talk about the Second Amendment if you want.
I love it. But anyway, so that one is concerning to me because especially, now if you're building a business and you
voluntarily use those platforms.
And you voluntarily use these platforms that other people control. So for me, it's you're walking into the L ambush. Like you absolutely know.
Willingly.
These are private companies.
I'm
walking right in.
If you see the train, you go, well, wow, there's high ground on my left and directly in front of me. I'm going to go right into the middle of this bitch.
Yep, exactly. I mean, that's how I'm building, a lot of my business this way. That's how I interact with people online on Instagram and all the rest of it. And I know that these companies hold different beliefs than I do, and they control the information. And now there's a government big tech type of L ambush. That's how I look at it. So you have support from a certain sector of the political class. You have control, essentially a monopoly on information and control of information because of how we conduct our business these days and how we communicate these days. And here I come, walking right into it.
Yeah.
And I see it.
I love how Joe describes it. Bad ideas are best combated with good ideas. And the only way that you can do that is if you bring everything into the open. Can you think of an example in history where censorship and restricting reading material from people worked out?
So, where has there ever been a country?
I mean, seriously, like
the good guys.
When
have the good guys ever been those that want to restrict access to information and censor people and cancel people? Give me one. Tell me which country that was or which government that was that did that we hold up in high esteem today, that we make movies about and make them the protagonists and the good guys. What books do we read about that we pass on to our kids where there's a government that controls the information, controls the people? Where are those the good guys?
I can't think of an example in the history of mankind.
Yeah, because there's zero.
And then it's interesting, right, And I haven't dove really deeply into this, and I think this largely might be a meme that I've seen pushed around on.
Memes can be clever.
They can be clever, and they can get you to think. We're talking about all these things that we can't say. We're talking about books that we're going to restrict access to. And then they just had, it was like the Grammys or the Emmys or something like that. And I don't know the exact title of the song that was on there, but like some of the performances, like we are at a national level then showing people wearing what a generation ago would be considered probably lingerie at best, might be a polite way to describe it, doing things that I don't really want my daughter to see, but that's on a national stage. And these other, I don't understand what the hell is going on.
I know.
And I also don't understand who has their hands on the steering wheel.
Yeah, no, it's Yeah, that is tough. Because you see Dr. Zeus canceled, and yet you see this other thing promoted, which gets promoted as art. Okay, wonderful. But once again, is that what we want our kids to emulate?
Well, and I'm not saying that I want what happened at the music. What would it be? The music event. I'm not saying I want that to not exist. What I'm saying is that I want people to have the choice with what they consume.
Oh yeah.
So don't tell me that somebody else is going to make the decision for me that these things right here, no, these aren't good for you. But this over here, yes, this is okay. Let me decide what I want and what is going to be good for me, as opposed to somebody else telling me. It's a very fucking slippery slope.
Oh yeah, no, it's always about control, and that's what's in my a theme that is in my novels is this theme of control, and that's what it comes back to, that power piece, that control piece, and we're seeing it at the highest levels of government. We're seeing it with a collaboration with big tech. We're seeing it really through sports now. We have through academia now, through publishing, through
so where
Hollywood.
Does it go? Like, where's this road lead?
There's a side that is essentially in control of culture, and they played the long game. This other side played the long game, and in the beginning, those terms like inclusivity and all, they sound great. They sound fantastic. Who's not for being inclusive?
I just need a more robust definition from the person that I'm talking to.
Yeah, it's inclusive if you think like us and act like us and believe the things that we do. That's what we mean by inclusive, not what you believe. And it's tough because there are limited choices, like you said. If when you had this agreement with these different companies, when you signed on for the first time to social media platforms, the expectation, I mean, if you could even read that stuff anyway, like when you click the Apple agreement, I just click it like everybody else because I got 1,000 things
I read every
going
word.
on.
I'm just joking. I don't. I scroll as fast as I can to click the accept button.
And it's like, what? You have to accept it? I'm going to just flip this thing and hit this button. You already have me. You know it. But the agreement was like, if I followed you, my expectation was that I'd see what you're putting up there, because I made that choice, and that's the expectations. And now over time, now we start, and it just gets taken a little bit away, a little bit more freedom, to all of a sudden, wait a sec, what did you post? I wanted to hear what you had to say, but they put something else in there. They had another thing pop up, or they restricted you, and I didn't see you at all.
Yeah.
But the expectation of me following you is that I'm going to find out, I'm following you. And I'm going to see hear what you have to say, because I made that choice, and I can make other choices, but not anymore. Now that is changing. And I talk about cancel culture in this book because it is on my head a lot, because I could be canceled at the touch of a button. Contact with Simon & Schuster, no. All the platforms that I'm on where I engage with people, gone.
So how do you manage that? Knowing that that's the guillotine, if you will, that could potentially be sitting over your head, how do you personally manage that?
Yeah, so I've never been one to shy away from anything, to change what I'm doing, because I'm afraid of something. In fact, just the opposite. So I talk about it, and I talk about it when it's appropriate, as it comes up, as I think it's interesting to other people in the course of what I post and talk about and create and that sort of thing. I weave it into the pages of my novels. So that's the way I've chosen to deal with it. But I know I'm walking right into that ambush.
Are you cautious? Do you restrict or change verbiage of what you would want to say, or do you just go directly at it and maintain yourself true to who you are?
Yeah, no, I don't change anything. And it was interesting because I didn't know going down this path if Simon & Schuster would say, hey, we really like your book, but you might want to change this, and this. And hey, could you throw in a couple of these kind of characters and make this person a hero and do this and that and kind of push a political agenda or whatever? Not once.
That's
not
awesome.
Once have they ever even hinted at that I did not have complete and total freedom to write about whatever I wanted. And I didn't know. Going in. I was kind of like, So no, I've never changed anything like that, but I know.
How about on social media? Because that is a touch point. It seems like when people, I hate to use the term make a mistake, because that is also another term that it changes broadly based off of definition. But sometimes people's behavior.
Or who's making it?
Yeah, people's behavior on social media they'll get put on that express bus to the canceling.
Yeah, no, I try to be thoughtful in whatever I do. So I don't So I don't change just because I know what I'm dealing with, and I know that, hey, if I post a picture of an American flag with a gun on it, and then I try to promote it, even though I'm not selling this gun, I know it's gonna, because I've tested it out. And if you read the actual verbiage that they have out there on what's allowed and what's not allowed, as long as you're not selling some of these things, you should be able to allow. Anyway, point being, so I tested the waters a little bit with that sort of thing, just because I was curious. But I try to be thoughtful in everything that I do, whether it's a post, because I figure people are trusting me with their time. If they're reading a book or they're listening to the audiobook, they're trusting me with their time. They're never going to get that time back. And I have to be a good custodian of that trust. And I carry that over into my posts on social media, whether it's a tweet with one sentence or it's something about history that I'm writing about on Instagram or whatever it might be. I want to be a good custodian of that trust to the person that is giving me that time. I figure I owe that to them. So I try to be thoughtful in everything that I do in that realm. But I do talk about things that are pertinent, that are timely, because these are political thrillers, and it would be odd for me not to talk about certain things. But I do it very naturally. So I don't make it a point to go down in flames because all of a sudden I want to talk about something in a way that's incendiary, or I'm not being thoughtful about it. So I just try to be thoughtful, and that's kind of how I approach each and every one of my posts, no matter what it is, how long it is. It doesn't matter. I want to add value to that person's day because they've trusted me. And so before I hit post on anything, or before I publish anything, I ask myself that question: have I added value to somebody's life with this? Because I take that trust very seriously, and that's the reason I can do what I do, is because people buy the books. And so what I owe them then is to provide something of value. So the answer to that question is I try to be thoughtful about all these things, but I don't shy away from any of it.
Do you ever receive interesting direct messages or negative feedback?
Yes. Oh my goodness. So there's this is fantastic. So this is the part that's fascinating to me about social media. I mean, I hear people complain about things all the time, but for me, I'm just fascinated by negative comments. And because once again, now that person has chosen to, like I did one the other day, I post 6 books every month, selections from a reading list. I put some together for the Naval Special Warfare Center before I retired, and then other ones are books that I read growing up that wouldn't have been appropriate for a professional reading list, but now they are because they make me who I am today. So I post 6 of those each month, and I posted 6 the other day. And of all those 6, one guy's comment on there, it really stood out to me. One was a Louis L'Amour book. He wrote hundreds, so many books. One of my favorites, Last of the Breed. But this one was called Haunted Mesa, and I put it on there. I remember exactly where I was when I was reading it when I was a kid. It was a great reading experience. I talked about that, and his only comment with all these books on there, I put the Iliad on there, I had Rifleman Dodd on there that we just talked about. I had a few other ones on there. Fraternity of the Stone, amazing book by David Morrell, who created Rambo in 1972. So I had all these on there. His only comment was, Haunted Mesa is Louis L'Amour's worst book. That's what you chose to tell me, or like that. You took that time, even though it's one sentence, but it's just fascinating to me. And then you look over on, so I do read the reviews on Amazon. I go through that more because they're fascinating, and and I take those ones that are negative, and then I'll read them sometimes and do a little video on it, just kind of have some fun. But people take time, like 4 paragraphs worth of time, to tell you how much they hate your book or you. Because they interpret a certain political leaning. And for me, it's that political leaning, guess what? It's called freedom. Like that's like very rarely will you see me post something about specific to a political party or that sort of thing, because for me, it's all about freedom.
It's the choice. It's the ability to be what you want to be and say what you want to say. I couldn't agree with you more about the First Amendment. I hate some things that people say and some things that they believe, but I would...
You engage.
I do, and I try to do it respectfully, but at the same time, and I'm just talking about in general, whether it be your neighbor or extended family or whatever it may be, I would absolutely give my life to ensure that they have the ability to say things that makes my blood boil.
That's it.
The First Amendment is not about people saying things that I like.
That's right.
I like being pushed. I like being challenged. I don't enjoy a lot of the things that people say. Should you be able to like call for violence and all that stuff? I don't think so. You know what I mean? There's probably something we could figure out about that. But
it's all been a lot of that's been figured out with Supreme Court cases. There's precedent. But people have to study it. Like people have to understand the difference between advocacy and incitement. Like
Correct.
There's a very clear definition between those two because it's been worked out over time. It didn't just start today.
Yeah.
Like we have 200 plus years of figuring this stuff out, and we have precedent. We have Supreme Court rulings. We have all sorts of things we can look back on. But we need to educate ourselves before we start spouting out and calling something that's clearly not incitement, or something that's advocacy, incitement, or whatever it might be. But it's the education piece. Like you have to take a breath, and that's how these social media platforms lend themselves just to that emotional
it's an instantaneous response.
You got to study these things. Like these are such important topics. You owe it to the future generations to put the time in, the mat time, like you did yesterday. You were 2 hours before I got here on the mat. You were 2.5 hours on that mat last night. It's 4.5 hours yesterday you rolled. You put in that mat time. Well, before someone makes a comment on some of these very important issues, they owe that mat time to future generations. They owe it to their children, their grandchildren, to put their time in reading, researching, taking a breath, thinking about things, and then comment.
And also,
in a thoughtful way.
And if they don't do any of that,
or you can just tweet.
But here's the thing. Let's say that somebody doesn't do any of that, and they make a ridiculous dumb comment, still protected by the First Amendment.
That's it.
That's the beauty.
That's it.
I hate some of the things people say, and I love the fact we live in a place where they can do that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, other places where you can't say these things and you go off to the gulag, or you get lined up and get a bullet in the head, or you get re-educated for a few months, maybe years, separated from your family. They need some education too. None of that's that's very common other places and has been throughout history, and I worry that it's going to become something that happens here for future generations. But
I don't think it'll get that far. Like I said, I think
because we got that Second Amendment, Andy Stump.
Well, here's the thing. We can talk about that now if you want. Another issue with the amendments that I find fascinating: people only want to focus on one or two, as if they are more important or more exclusive than the other ones. It's like maybe we should treat all of the amendments with an equal level of gravity.
Yeah, and most amendments have been added over time. Like there's an amendment process. That's it's not easy, and that's by design. But most amendments that have been added have been done so to give freedoms, not to take them away.
Right to having a jury trial. Maybe your Miranda
due process.
Due process. Your Miranda. All
that's
great
another
things.
one.
Those are also important as well. Perhaps we should. Let's just treat all of the amendments as if they are equal.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a reason that one is one and two is two. Like they didn't all of a sudden think like, hey, which one should we put? Which one should we put first? Let's put this.
I'm not arguing with that. What I'm saying is, you'll see people like, no, this is the only one that matters. I'm like, no, they all matter. You can't pick the Bill of Rights and the amendments and the Constitution. Like, it's not a buffet.
You don't get to pick and choose.
You don't get to pick and choose. They all apply, or none of them apply. That's how this needs to work. You don't get to pick and choose here. Yeah,
and now we're at this place where that First Amendment, it's tough. The cancel culture, the immediate cancellation of people, not forgiving people because they have these platforms now where they can make this mistake. I think forgiveness is one of the most important things that we can do as human beings. Is forgive someone who wrongs us, because when you keep something inside and you just keep this visceral hatred of someone because they wronged you inside for your life, like they're winning. Like
Okay, so how good are you at forgiveness? Because I am not good at it. I struggle with it.
Yeah. No, I articulate it. So I call it out to myself, and I don't just stew. I think about what happened, and I actually verbalize that forgiveness. Like, hey, I move on. Like that's much more healthy for me these days. I haven't always been like that. Like I've always been before I got to this stage in my life. Forgiveness wasn't really something I thought at all about. I always thought, hey, here's fuel. This is fuel for my fire. Which is an not
interesting
forgiving
way to view it, because I find it. I have gotten better at forgiveness, and it is something that I actively try to work on, is letting things go, because it is fire, but it's also weight.
Yeah.
Putting that down and just being able to
take a breath
and feel lighter and move forward.
Yeah.
I have wasted probably years of time and energy and effort being pissed or holding a grudge against somebody who probably didn't even realize that I was pissed or holding. Like, how much of my own personal time have I wasted doing that? And it's my goal do that less.
Yeah, no,
forward?
I had to think about it in those terms because we were so busy in that last life. I mean, it was a full-on sprint, and this new chapter in life is also a full-on sprint, building this business, building the readership, writing the books, doing all these things that go along with that. That's a full-on sprint, but so was our last life. And there was really no time in that life, for me anyway, to forgive anyone. Like, we're going down range and I'm going to crush that. I'm going to Iraq, I'm going to Afghanistan, I'm going to the Northern Arabian Gulf, whatever, which we called it back then, going to Southern Philippines. Now I need to study that, what's going on down there. I wasn't really thinking about forgiveness. I was thinking, about revenge, about retribution, about doing my job, doing all the things I need to do so that when my finger touches that trigger, I've done everything that I possibly can to make sure I'm making the right decision to support the whole team and that effort and that mission. There wasn't really time to think about forgiveness or anything. It was like, if somebody messed up in the platoon, it got corrected pretty quick.
Via duct tape.
Yeah, it was like a self-correcting, kind of a, I don't know, situation or organism, embolism, whatever. Either way, so that was a little different back then because there wasn't really time to think about forgiving anybody for anything. If you screwed up, it was going to get corrected, and you were going to keep sprinting forward, always trying to improve and get better because the enemy's doing the same. They're adapting. We need to adapt as well. In this life, if I make a mistake on the page, I can go back the next day and fix it. I can make conversations.
And you have an editor that's going to give it another set of eyeballs.
Another set of eyeballs on there, and that's what I like about writing is that I can go back and when you have a conversation with someone and you leave that conversation and you're like all mad because you think, oh, I should have said this. I was so mad. It would have been perfect.
Have that realization about 5 minutes after.
Yes,
I'll
exactly.
have the most awesome comeback, and I'll just scream it in my car. I'm like, oh yeah,
exactly. And I think most people are like that. But with writing, you get to figure that out. You get to have that perfect comeback or that conversation and put it in here. So there's that side of it. But with on the forgiveness side, I didn't really think about it until I turned the page, left the military, started down this other path, and things happen in life, and you can learn from them and move on. And if you think you were wronged by a person, an entity, whatever it might be, there's a lot of power in being able to articulate what happened and forgive and move on. You don't need to, be best friends or, you can leave them behind.
Yeah.
But just forgiving, like just saying that word, forgiveness, is powerful. It has been for me anyway. And just moving forward in a positive way rather than stewing.
Well,
that's
there's a
not
difference.
helping anyone.
There's also a difference between forgiveness and giving people a second chance. You can forgive and put the weight down yourself and move on, and still not give that individual a second chance to reintegrate with your life or do something that's going to put you back into that place.
Yeah, I think that probably depends on what the situation is.
No,
Some people might not deserve that second chance.
Maybe a lot of them don't. Maybe somebody really did something, but you as that individual are making that choice to forgive them for that action, move on with your life, no longer invest that time, energy, and effort. You don't want anything to do with them. So just because you forgive somebody, this is for people listening, because I'll get questions about this too. You can forgive somebody without bringing them back into your life. It's healthy for you to make that choice and move on. That does not mean that they necessarily deserve a second chance.
Oh, yeah. No, exactly. I think there's a lot to be said for moving on and getting rid of negative people that bring negative situations, that bring drama, that bring all that stuff. Like for us, for our family, I mean, we have to deal with our middle child. Like any negativity, like it's got to go away. It's just how it is. Like there's so much going on each and every single day. Like we're this team, we're this fire team with our family there. So if anyone comes in from the outside with something negative, it's gotta get away. That's just how it is.
That's fair.
Yeah. I mean, what are you supposed to do?
Second Amendment. You've mentioned it a few times.
I know. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Thoughts?
That's so.
How's the Second Amendment doing these days in your mind?
Yeah, so there's some things that happened actually yesterday. I think about getting permit. I just saw it in passing because I was because I was missing my flight up here.
Yeah, good job.
About getting
noted. About failure to meet standards at the airport.
That's true. Forgive me.
Yes, and I'll give you a second chance.
Thank you. At least I made it up the same day, so I guess that was my second chance. Made it. Yes. But there were some things I saw as I was just like boarding the flight, and I haven't looked into it too much about having to get permits in order to even then get to the background check portion of your gun purchase.
A permit for a background check?
Right. So first you have to do. So I think of it in terms of, remember motorcycles on base. Remember when we first got in, people rode motorcycles on base. Okay. Then there were some accidents maybe, and so they said, okay, now everybody has to wear a helmet, okay, in states, okay. Yeah, so people started wearing helmets, and then they said, okay, yeah, now you have to take this
Motorcycle safety course,
and it's only this one day a month, and you have to sign up and have your master chief sign this, have your chief sign this, have your CO sign off on here, here's your ops chief sign off on this. So meanwhile, now we've wasted most of a day trying to track these people down, figuring out what our training schedule is, when we can go to this class. Oh, do you have to do your motorcycle license first? It's from another state. Is that allowed? I don't know. Okay, no. Now you have to go get the California one. Now you have to take this course, and then your motorcycle has to be inspected, and then you have to have gloves on. You have to have boots that cover your ankles. And if you show up at the gate without boots covering your ankles on your motorcycle, you can't come on base. You won. Like, finally they won. Like, I'm not riding my motorcycle on base. You got me. You've administratively made it so difficult to ride my bike onto base that I'm not going to do it. Like, I have to train up and be ready for war. I can't be doing all these other things. So they administratively made it so difficult, unless you worked like an admin or something, and maybe you have some time and you're not deploying or whatever else, and you can do all these things. But if you're going to an island, then you're going up to Washington State, and then you're going out to Mid-South Institute of Self-Defense, and then you're on a dive trip, and then you're on a jump trip. When are you supposed to find time to do all this stuff, this administrative? So I see a lot of the efforts being taken by by politicians and advocacy groups to administratively make it almost, to negate the Second Amendment through these administrative requirements. And it's a tactic, and it worked for me on motorcycles. Like, finally I was like, yeah, I'm not riding my motorcycle on base. You win, Master Chief. All right. So I see that happening with the Second Amendment as well. So they're tactics, and the other side is using them very, very effectively to make it more difficult to exercise that right to defend yourself and your family.
And it will, whether you agree with that tactic or not, it still doesn't address the fact that there are currently more guns in the United States than citizens. So I could see that impacting gun sales, or your ability to seamlessly or even efficiently purchase a weapon moving forward, but it doesn't do anything to address what is already in existence.
We talk about root causes for most everything else, even terrorism. Like, we talk about root causes, which I think is important. Like, it's important to have our little slice of going down range, building target packages, taking people off the street. Is that long term gonna help? Like, I don't know.
Only if it's applied into an efficient and effective strategy.
Or is it going to be like what we see, like most big cities in this country today? They have had SWAT teams going out serving warrants almost every night. Let's say since the late 60s, early 70s. And a lot of these places are similar as far as, like, there's not a night where they're not doing that. And there's not a night in Baghdad, Mosul, Ramadi, wherever else we are, where we're not really going out and doing something, where we're not getting target package together, we're not gathering intelligence, we're not figuring out where we're going to hit this person and waiting for that trigger. Does that mean that that's in perpetuity, forever? Is there an end game there? And by doing those things, now all of a sudden we went into this house, we grabbed this guy out of his bed in the middle of the night. His 3 kids see it. We left them behind because they're younger. Well, guess what? Guess what their impression of us is? Did we just build 3 more by taking this one guy in, and then we interrogate him? We go get one other guy,
and that's if you take
and there's another
in.
3. Yeah. So another 3 kids and the wife or whatever else. And on the way there, we blew up some whatever. It's very interesting to think about, especially after 20 years, almost 20 years since September 11th, is thinking of, did all these things, all these missions that we did, all these people that we took off the battlefield, did it help? I don't know. Long term,
I think
we create a lot more terrorists that we're going to have to continue fighting, that our kids are going to fight. Like, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But point being that was our side of it. That is a very slim part of this, a holistic approach to solving a problem. We solved it with this one guy. I can solve that problem very easily. I can take him off, the street, the battlefield, whatever. That's we're good at that part. Now this root cause part, okay, I have to look at that a little bit. We got to think about this root cause piece, because maybe that needs some addressing, and we do need to put thought into that. Maybe it's not my part of it. Maybe my part is still building that target package and waiting for that trigger, and then going out and taking that person back to base to do it again that night or the next night. But hey, what about this holistic approach? So point being, when we're talking about the Second Amendment, we're talking about gun violence in some of these cities, what are those root causes? We talk about it with everything else, but with this, the root cause is an inanimate object in a lot of people's mind. That's the problem. Well, okay. You talked about the root causes here, and here. but not here. Now you just want to make this administratively more difficult for me to defend myself and my family and become more reliant on this government, because only for a very short time in human history have we been able to outsource our protection. Have we been able to call 911? Have we been able to go down to that local grocery store? For the rest of human history, we have had to provide for our families, provide for our tribe.
911.
You are your own 911. Exactly. So this is very new in the human experience, and it's very for me. And I think I'm kind of in tune with that kind of more visceral side of myself, which is why I wanted to come in the military, not just come in the military in general, but come ground combat. Okay, special operations. Okay, SEAL teams. Like that's kind of the thought process there. And now I have a government that wants more control over those things. And I think like most of us, like somewhere inside, know that it's our responsibility to protect ourselves and our families. That's the greatest gift of all, is life, and provide for them. And what do I need to do that? I need tools. And that tool in this case is protected by the Second Amendment.
Where would you, your personal beliefs on the Second Amendment, where do the limitations lie?
They're already there. There are so many limitations that make it so difficult for me to go down and purchase something, because I adhere to the law.
Good answer. That's a good thing to say publicly, is you adhere to the law.
I mean, there's
a gun under the table for you.
I mean, there's a book called 3 Felonies a Day. Harvey Silverglate is the author, and I think he wrote it back in 2000. I don't know, 9, 10, 11, somewhere in there anyway. And he talks about how that most of us get up in the morning, go to work, come home, put the kids to bed, and within the course of that day, we've committed 3 felonies because of how laws are written today,
really?
How broad they are in their interpretation, called lawfare. You can target people. You can find, so Stalin's chief of secret police is very famous for saying, show me the man and I'll find you the crime. And that is because the laws are so broad by design, so they can target you specifically and then find what you did wrong, because so many laws are on the book. So when we relate that to firearms, there are so many laws. It is so confusing. You with your CCW permit, driving down the street, you pass a school. Oh, guess what? You are now within 100 yards, 50 yards, whatever that law is, or maybe there's a local ordinance. Who knows? But now you've just broken the law, and totally unbeknownst to you.
Let alone driving across state boundaries as well.
Oh, yeah. Or how about your flight? Now you're heading to a hunt somewhere. You have your rifle. Oh, guess what? So guess where you're landing? Now you're landing in New Jersey. Now you're landing in New York. And all of a sudden, this rifle that was going to be illegal in my flight from X state to X state, well, now I didn't land. I landed in a new place, and guess what's illegal here? Yeah, this rifle with this
maybe
magazine.
The can I have on it too.
Exactly. And they are not forgiving in a lot of these cases. So point being, there are already so many restrictions on our right to exercise that Second Amendment and defend our family. Don't need another one.
No, I guess I asked that less from the restrictions that are already in place. When it comes to just your personal thoughts, when it comes to civilians, what type of weaponry should they have access to? Is there a limit in your mind where it's like, maybe not for your civilian populace?
Like those restrictions are already in place. Like you cannot go out and buy without going through a bunch of other process, a fully automatic weapon. You have to go through this process. You have to pay fees. It's exorbitant, and it's very difficult. And you have to have time.
Here's a question for you.
And you have to have time. But you know what that does? That limits the right of the person, the single mom who is working 3 jobs, that has to provide for her family and protect her family as well. Because guess where she lives? Probably not in the best area, not in a gated community, not with some guard standing out front, certainly not with private security that she pays for. Guess what she has to do now? Now she has to go and take this class, get this permit, jump through all these hoops. And when she's supposed to do that? Oh, when she's working.
Well, I'm going to say for her, the answer probably isn't a fully automatic weapon.
Or it's a pistol. Just a pistol.
Well,
even so.
I'm going to give you multiple choice. You ready for this one? Because I'm curious. People ask me about this all the time, too. Unfortunately, in this multiple choice question, you're getting shot at. So there is no option C where it is like, hey, can I not be in this situation?
Shoot back.
Semi or full auto? Would you rather have somebody shoot at you with full auto or semi?
Would I rather have someone shoot? I'd rather have them shoot me full auto.
Yes. People feel like, they're like,
I know.
We need these fully automatic weapons. I'm like, listen, I get it. With the cost of ammo right now, you may not want a fully automatic weapon because you're hucking dollar bills downrange at a pretty fast cyclic rate of fire. And also, your best chance is the first round out, because I'm going to hold so incredibly still because your shit's going to be all over the place. It's semi, man.
All these things, and all these things are perpetuated by these myths of Hollywood. Same thing with
by these assholes who write books and then they turn them into fucking Amazon series. You know what I'm talking
and you
about?
Think the assassin? I've heard of these people. Yeah, and you have this vision of an assassin with a suppressor, getting away because he has a suppressor, which is still
utterly
loud.
and completely silent. It's like somehow actually a negative decibel sound. It actually sucks the noise back into the barrel.
That's right. So really, it just protects our hearing, and it's in a lot of countries, it's a gentlemanly thing to do is to shoot with a suppressor.
I prefer it for hearing and also recoil management.
Many benefits. Many benefits. I live in a state now where I can have this sort of thing. So I was out with the dead air silencer guys the other day, and we were just shooting all their stuff just 2 days ago, and it's awesome. But yeah, there's so many restrictions already out there, and if someone's shooting at me. Yeah, the full, go for it, buddy, with the full auto.
I hope they're on full auto, because like I said, I'm going to turn sideways and hold really still. And if I have the ability to shoot back and I have a fully automatic weapon, I'm going to flip it to semi and take one well-aimed shot.
Yes. No, exactly.
So for all of those of you out there who just really want to get a fully automatic weapon, go get one. By all means, prepare to pay out the nose for it, and then check out the cost of ammo. You might realize that your expenditure per minute at a economic rate is incredibly high.
Yeah. No, I intend to have some fully automatic stuff in the arsenal at some point, but it's one time figuring out how to get through all these laws, and then two, cost, of course. Right now, it's not the priority. The priority is building this business, expanding the readership, engaging with people, writing the books, all that sort of thing. And that's why I've been in Utah for 4 years, and I'm just now getting my first suppressor.
I don't want to see people lose their ability to protect themselves, their loved ones, their family, their property, the things that they hold dear. I don't, when it comes to a perspective of time, again, so, you came up and I was doing jiu-jitsu yesterday. The investment in time required to actually be, I would say, competent and have the ability to protect yourself is not measured in minutes or hours or days or weeks, or I would even say months.
Or a YouTube video.
But in a day, I could take a housewife to a range, and we could have, if I had, I'll call it 6 to 8 hours, and we could leave there with an understanding of firearms in general, how to disassemble and put back together call it a Glock. There's like one piece on a Glock. That's what I love about them, right? They're easy. Obviously, there's not just one piece. People are going to lose their mind. You don't know what you're talking about.
It's so tough. You say one thing, it's so tough.
I'm saying it's simple in comparison to taking apart the bolt carrier group of a AR or M4 platform. So you could go there and they could have an understanding of how the system operates, safe functioning of the weapon. I'm not going to say that a static range time is necessarily going to prepare you for carrying in your car or at a restaurant or in a low light situation or any of that stuff. But I can take somebody who's really concerned with their safety and in the period of a day, give them, in my mind, the most effective tool to protect themselves. And I don't know of any other tools that you can do that with. I mean, I guess you could give them a baseball bat, but it doesn't have the range.
Which is used to kill more people than all firearms combined.
Potentially. I think if you throw hammers in there too, or bladed
fists,
weapons. And the thing is, with weapons, it allows you to control range as well. I don't have to wait for you to actually grab me, because in that situation, if you really don't know what you're doing, you might be screwed. But I look at, my daughter, or more often than not, I will get hit up from women who will solicit questions to the podcast asking about defense, and my answer is always the same. It's if I have limited time, I have to get a tool into your hand that is designed for your protection. How does it do that? The threat of taking life or actually taking life. I mean, that's what guns are designed to do. They're designed to kill. Can you protect yourself with them? Absolutely, but let's be intellectually honest about what they're designed for, and that's okay. But I don't want to see people lose that ability to do that. I don't think you should be able to get an RPG-7, although it would be sweet if I got one of those things.
Yeah.
If I had a javelin in my
RPG-7's
safe,
for me, but not for thee.
I would like a javelin.
I know you have a javelin issue with javelins. It's so.
I don't have an issue with javelins. I have a love affair.
You have a connection to the javelin.
Somebody who worked for the company sent me a hat,
Oh, that's
amazing.
awesome. That's
Yes.
awesome. That's great. You're like, where's the rest of this? Is there another package?
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Man, can you imagine how many felonies I would? First off, I probably
3 a
commit
day.
6 felonies a day based on the speed that I drive sometimes.
I know your truck is fast, but
But I don't want to see that right eroded. It's so
Yeah.
important to me. And I also don't want to see those guns going into the wrong hands. But I don't think any type of legislation is going to prevent that.
yeah, legislating evil,
Have fun with that one.
Yeah, no, exactly. But so we had in January, I think it was 2 million new background checks.
Yeah.
And I think that's the number, give or take. And I guess I get this question a lot too, is where to invest that money? What should I get? That sort of thing. And hey, it's invest in that training. Invest in that training. Get out there and go to a place that there's so many people that are leaving law enforcement. I think we're getting more people leaving law enforcement these days, but people leaving the military. We've had people at war for 20 years that are very familiar with these different weapon systems that are now out there in the private sector. You can vet people today a lot easier than you could in the past by opening a phone book back in 1987 and looking for, gun store, there, and then go in and ask them, and then how do you really know that person's background? Well, now you can check, and you can see like who's connected to who's talking to who's supporting who. So you can do your homework on these things now. You can see, hey, who's passing through your town, who's coming through a city that's close to you, or you can make the investment. You can go to some place and spend 3 days there, 4 days there. I drive out to Thunder Ranch to continue. I'm a student of weaponcraft. I have my whole life before the military, in the military, continues today. So I drive out to Thunder Ranch in Oregon and I train out there just to keep those skills up, because it's just a part of who I am.
Yep.
I feel I have to do that for my family. It's my responsibility to defend my family, be prepared to defend my family. So taking that however much money you have and realizing that investing the majority of that in training is probably the way to go, depending on background and all the rest of that sort of thing, because it's important to know your capabilities and, more importantly, your limitations with your chosen weapon system. Capabilities is great, but also limitations. So if you have, let's say, if you go to a 4-day course and you're rocking a full-size pistol, you're in a 320 series SIG, or you're in a Glock 17 or whatever, and then you leave that range and you put on a Glock 43 or a SIG P365.
Not the same.
You might want to spend some time with those so that you know your limitations with that weapon system that is now on you. So what I like to do is have 2 courses of fire that are exactly the same, but with different weapon systems. So you're running it with full size over here. You're doing that exact same thing then with your subcompact, and you're like, oh, okay, I see the difference here. I know my capabilities, limitations. But with what's most important about this training is that for whatever reason, being around weapons, being a student of weaponcraft, it opens this aperture up and allows you to make decisions ahead of time that allow for your survival. It somehow is connected directly with that sixth sense, with trusting your instincts, and that is really the most important part of all this. So you have your pistol, you've been training, you have a rifle, you know where that is, because you want a rifle more than you want a pistol. If you're actually in a gunfight, fight your way to that rifle and get that thing rocking. But you know your capabilities and limitations, and because of this immersion in something that's so visceral and primal of defending this gift of life, you've now opened this aperture and you have a better connection to the reason that we're all here today, is because our ancestors had this sixth sense. They trusted their instincts. They could put food on the table. They could defend the tribe. They could defend themselves. They could defend their families. So for whatever reason, doing this training, being on the mat in jiu-jitsu, going to the range, going to different courses, training with different people, it just opens that aperture up a bit. So you're like, okay, this does not look right. You know what I'm going to do? I'm turning my car around.
Conflict
I'm turning
avoidance.
Around. I'm avoiding this. Yeah.
Do you know what jiu-jitsu makes me do when it comes to fighting?
Not do it.
Makes me not want to fight, because that shit hurts.
It hurts. Yeah.
And if I want to fight, I have a bunch of friends who will go and will simulate murder with each other. So if I feel like I need to have that expression, I don't need to do it at a 7-Eleven.
No.
I can call my buddies and be like, hey, do you want to go fight to nearly the death? And then we'll tap and trust each other as training partners. And they'll say, hell yes, I do. And then I'll leave that like, the last thing on earth I need to do is go shoulder check somebody and be a dickhead and try to prove myself on the streets.
Yep. But yeah, turning that, that's what I talk to the kids about all the time. Hey, if something doesn't look right, and an Army Special Forces sniper from Vietnam passed that on to me before the SEAL teams, and he said, if something doesn't look right, it's probably not.
Yep.
And that is true. Like that, there is something, trust that. Pull the head out of the phone, just look around a little bit. And if something doesn't look right, trust that instinct and leave. Turn around.
Yeah, what's the worst case scenario? There was nothing that you should have been worried about, but you continue on your day, avoided any potential conflict, because the other side of that coin is, what's the worst case scenario is you go in there and you felt like something was wrong, but you go in anyway, and you maybe potentially spend the rest of your life trying to fight your way out of a bad situation.
Yep. No, got to trust those. Got to trust those instincts, and I mean that's why we're all here today.
Indeed.
Yeah, crazy. But yeah, put in that time. So I do that question too, and there are many more benefits to training with someone competent, with multiple people that are competent, than just physically learning how to manipulate a weapon system. There are other
Weapons are a
benefits to
tool,
that as
people.
well.
It will be limited by the individual holding it. Some tools, some people with those tools I've seen do what I can only describe as amazing things, and other people have what I will describe as Gucci weapons, and they pick it up, and if you held still, you'd be just fine at 5 yards. They wouldn't be able to get you. So the tool is limited by the individual holding it. Invest in yourself. Once you decide what you want to get as that tool, then invest in yourself. And I love the understanding where your competency is, but then also your limitations. You have to know where the boundaries are.
Very important. Same thing with hunting too.
Yeah.
Is knowing that, hey, this shot here at 500 yards, no wind, on a static range, flat, no angles. I can make that all day, but guess what? Okay, now we have a full value wind coming in. It's raining outside. It's last light, and I hear that elk is that because you put in the time, you put in that mat time on the range in these different conditions, that that weapon system, and that you can or can't make that shot. So that's what you owe to that animal, is knowing your limitations. And it's not just you and that rifle, it's you and that rifle and the environmental conditions, and same thing with the bow.
I'd say for most people, and even to include myself, my range distance where I can hit accurately, I will generally cut it in half especially with a bow. I can sit out there for whatever reason, that foam elk that never moves. He never looks over at me, and I never have to worry about when I can draw. Just sit there and just doink.
Broadside.
100 yards, 110, 120. You get a big bugling bull come in at like 60, and he's looking at you, and you want to really, really, really draw, but you might have to draw early, and then you're holding. I can't even hold my pin on that thing at 60 yards because I'm just...
Yeah, so it's different.
Yeah, it's completely different, and I understand that, and... I have taken some longer shots, not because I wanted to. That's the shot that presented itself. But I am astutely aware of where the train is going to be coming off the old tracks. I try to avoid that.
That's important. And then it comes down to you. It's your decision. You get to decide whether you take that shot or not. But doing those long range distance training with a rifle, taking those 120, 150 yard shots with a bow, some people do. Well, that means at 25, it helps it just helps that competency as things come closer, as environmental conditions, vary. But same thing with that rifle. Like you take that mile plus long shot, ding, and you hear that, it's like, oh, awesome.
Don't do that at a muley.
But guess
deer,
what?
people.
At 150 yards, 150 yards now at last light with the rain coming down or whatever,
because you have no time or you're braced
different
against
positions.
a tree.
But you have to put the time in on the mat to do that, just like you did yesterday. You got to put the time in with these weapon systems, with these rifles, with these bows at these different angles. That's why Total Archery Challenge is so great, because you're taking these crazy shots, not necessarily because you're going to do that in real life, but because you get a data point there, like, oh, this is not the shot that I need to take in real life. Or you do it and you're like, oh man, that's pretty cool, but I probably shouldn't take this on a real animal. I should probably be a little closer if I'm at this angle, at this distance, all those sorts of things. But it's just it's all about training
and knowing those things, and being able to immediately identify, like, this is a no-go shot. It helps me at least with my decision making, and then I can continue to plan. The worst thing that I have encountered is, maybe I think I can do
this.
I'm going to give it, and then it just comes apart because I'm completely uncertain of myself, even beginning the shot process, falling back on hope, essentially, which, as you and I both know, is not a great strategy.
Yes. It's hope is not a course of action. Our 30 seconds out, friends say.
Sean's the best.
I wove that into the novel here, or something similar. Anyway, but
do you still practice long range rifle marksmanship?
Yes, I do. Not as much as once again, I prioritize for certain things these days, writing the book, building the readership, all those sorts of things. So the last time I really got on the range was, it might have been I've been out there just shooting, but to do an actual 5-day training course with people that know what they're doing. And
precision long range.
Yeah. So out at FTW Ranch in Texas, I took my wife there for Mother's Day, and our daughter there for same thing. I thought, hey, they have an opening in this 5-day rifle course. Why is there nothing planned over Mother's Day? That sounds like a fantastic time. What a gift that is. We can all go, and it'll be great. So
this is how men and women view the world slightly differently.
So yeah, my wife was not as excited as I thought she was going to be when I presented this as an option for Mother's Day. She begrudgingly agreed, and so my wife and daughter, we all went out to Texas. And as we got closer to that date, she got less and less enthusiastic about this. I didn't quite get it. I don't know what the deal is, but then we flew down to Texas, and we ended up having a great time.
Yeah.
But probably for the guys out there, probably Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, birthdays, maybe something other than a weapon or a weapons training course might be good. Or maybe you do something like, you do the jewelry and then you follow it up. Maybe a couple of days later, you follow it up with the rifle or the pistol or the course or whatever it might be.
You call that preloading.
Yeah, I did not do that.
What is your favorite long-range caliber? Let's call it 1,000 yards and in, and then post 1,000 yards, or not post, past 1,000 yards.
Yeah, just because I have such a relationship with the 300 Win Mag because of our time in the teams. That's what I shot. I just know the round. I just have a connection to it.
Yeah.
Now there are probably other things like that 300 PRC out there, of course. And 338 Lapua has been around for a long time. 405 Shy Attack. There's all these things out there, but we didn't have them in the teams to shoot all this ammo at all these distances, all these different ranges, all these different angles, urban, rural, wherever. So I just spent most of my time with that round. And then by default, when we got the Mark 11 and the Mark 12, we already kind of knew those rounds a little more. So I'm very in tune with 5.56, with the 7.62, and with 300 Win Mag, and then a 50. But because that's what we used.
It is also my favorite.
It's hard to.
It's a laser beam / scalpel, and it. For people who have never watched a 300 Win Mag round hit a big game animal, damn. Then, well, I don't know what this says about me. Only perhaps exceeded by watching it hit a human being, but that's what I like.
Yeah. I mean,
that's what I'm into because it has.
Don't judge.
It has the same effect, but even more so. But that thing can reach out. That's a true 1,000-yard plus round.
Yeah,
1,500, I would say, actually, depending on your ability.
Yep. I remember at sniper school, I think we had dope out to 14, I want to say, with our 300s. Felt good. Maybe it was 16, but felt good out to 1,200 for sure. Felt good at 1,000 after you're doing 73 days, of only shooting, which was awesome. But then we had, at the time, Remington Custom Shop 308s, so 7.62 type thing you only used in sniper school before you moved on to the 300 Win Mag. With those, I think we had dope out to 1,200 and felt good at 1,000. I think that's kind of how I remember it anyway. But yeah, 300 Win Mag is just kind of a part of me, just like some snipers in Vietnam. They like that Model 70. Model 70 308, and that's what they used, and so they have a connection to it. But I do want to get a 300 PRC. I want to get a few other things out there. Have
fun. I wonder what a box of 20 rounds costs for that thing. 50, 60 bucks.
I might know a guy.
That's the thing. In the modern day, man, you're hucking some dollar bills downrange. You might spend a couple $100 just sighting your rifle in.
This is why people need to be prepared. Because a lot of people tell me, like when COVID kicked off, and I was doing a lot of my interviews, it was hard to figure out. Not hard, I just had to adapt. When COVID hit last year, my last book came out April 12th. So kind of uncertain times. You didn't know about your job, you didn't know about health, and then I have this book coming out, so no one really knew what to do. You couldn't go back and look at data from the last pandemic and say, hey, this is what we did last time, because didn't exist. So kind of to figure it out. So in my interviews, I talked about being prepared and taking these lessons. Like if you didn't feel prepared over the last couple months as we moved into this period with COVID, so March, April, May timeframe, well, now you have some data points. Now you have some lessons, but what's important is taking those lessons and applying them going forward. So make those changes. If you thought, what would be good if I had maybe a water purification thing, just in case the water all of a sudden comes out, there's nobody down at the whatever, and all of a sudden I turn the faucet on and everything comes out brown. Maybe I should have a way to start a fire. Maybe I should do we have fire extinguishers in every room? How about a little food? We have some maybe some rice and beans, just put them in the back of the thing, and maybe we need them, maybe we don't, but at least we know they're there. We're not at the last second scrambling like, oh my gosh, everything we have is perishable, and we're not prepared for this. Or same thing with firearms. Do I have enough ammo? Do I have enough? How does my family know how to use these tools? That sort of thing. So I framed it like that. So point being, on the ammo side of the house, be prepared.
I'm going to add to your list of things. How about focus on your health and wellness?
Yeah.
How about go into a crisis as readily equipped as you can possibly be? And again, all the things that you just listed, they're tools, except for the food, obviously, which is food. Limited by the person who is going to be operating those tools. How about after a year now, I would like to think that most people have realized, the biggest or single largest limiting factor may be themselves. So put the time and effort in on that as well too. I would love to see this emphasis shifted from, everything going on with the pandemic. Cool. Now let's start addressing some root causes in the U.S. that seem to be pretty attached to the mortality rate, whether it be obesity, things that we can control. So get yourself into the optimal condition before the crisis occurs, and you're going to be much better off.
And these things aren't paranoid. That's the other side of it. Like people can interpret it or be like, oh, just paranoid. So it's not being paranoid. It's just being prepared.
Yeah, there's a difference.
There's definitely you can. We know people that think of life in terms of going from shadow to shadow because either they can't leave the last life behind or they're like super tactical.
I don't hang out with those people anymore.
It's exhausting. It's exhausting. So we're not talking about that. It's not. You don't need to like do ninja rolls from shadow to shadow as you work your way down to the local hardware store. It's just about taking a breath, looking around, being aware, and making good decisions. Like that's all it is. And part of those good decisions are, do we have a fire extinguisher in the house?
Yeah.
No? Oh, wait a sec. We do. Is it expired? Okay. Hey, do the kids know how to use it? If we're not here, does the babysitter know where it is and how to use it? Like those little things. It's not paranoia, but we've gotten so used to 911. Or whatever else it is.
13 fire extinguishers in a 3-bedroom home. That would, I would say, perhaps is paranoia.
Maybe, perhaps, perhaps, debatable.
Everything has a limit.
But
to include, I would say, people with guns and ammo. If you want to collect 1,000 guns, go ahead.
I will.
You will, and that's fine. And if you want to have 5 million rounds of ammunition, go ahead. It just might be a touch much for a preparedness situation. You're not going to.
It's very prepared.
It's very prepared. Or in that situation, that person is just very enthusiastic. Maybe they're a collector. But I know a lot of people. Not a lot of people. I know some people who have a ton of guns and no ammo. That's not correct. I don't know actually a lot of people though that have a shit ton of ammo and not many guns.
Unless they're selling it, maybe. I don't know. Unless that's their business. That's a possibility. But yeah, no. I like different tools. I like having choices. I like having options. Yeah. 375 H&H. I went to Alaska with that 2 years ago now, I guess.
Was that in prep for this book?
That was, yeah. Well, no, then the one before this for Savage Son.
Oh, yes, that's correct.
Savage Son. I went up there. I went to Alaska, and then I also went to Kamchatka Peninsula, Siberia, just south of Siberia, because that's where a lot of this book Savage Son takes place. And then I took what happened over there with a bear in Kamchatka Peninsula, and I morphed it. So I took it and I fictionalized it a little bit, and I dropped it in Alaska as a story that sets up something that happens later. So
the Flathead Valley showed up a lot.
It did, yeah.
Which is where we're sitting right now.
That's where we're sitting right now. Yeah. And last time I took note when I was here. I took note where you live and where our other friends that you met when I was up here.
Did you take note of where you left that arrow?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Let me explain. It's beautiful. At my house.
Be sure to post it.
I will take a picture of it and post it. Every day that I drive up the driveway and leave, there is an arrow in a tree that was nowhere near the target that you were shooting at. I believe it was your first arrow out.
I think I did not adjust. What did we shot close first or far? Anyway, something I didn't adjust.
In my mind, I remember the target being 20 yards away. You sent this arrow into a tree that I'm never taking out. This house, when it's generationally passed down, this arrow will remain.
This arrow will remain.
What it happens to be in the Flathead Valley, which a large portion of that book took place in.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I love it up here. And there's another friend of mine. She's an author, Christine Carbo. She writes about this area in her thrillers and mysteries. So I'd call her and I'd say, hey, what coffee shop do I need to put in here? I see I'm online right now and I'm looking and I see these 3 or 4, whatever it is. And she'd say, well, this one is this and this is this. I like this one. And so I'd weave it in. And then, hey, what bookstore is in town? I see there's 2, but one looks like it's, kind of trinkety or something. I don't know. So I ask her. So I try to weave in that local flavor, and I like to travel to these places as much as I possibly can. So I couldn't do it for Devil's Hand, this next one coming out. And
because of
COVID. Yeah. But I was also very lucky, and this is very research intensive, because this weaves in a story of infectious diseases and the weaponization of infectious diseases. So I was studying that history, particularly from the end of World War II up to today. What happened to the Japanese program? What happened to the German program at the end of the war? How did the Soviet Union can the United States build off those? What did being signatories of these conventions in the 70s, what does that mean for us going forward? What is defensive bioweapon? What does that mean? Do that mean you have to create one first in order to figure out the defense to it? So there's all sorts of things that I was researching that didn't necessarily entail me traveling. So I got lucky with that. Now for this next one, I'm hoping that some countries open up, particularly Israel, for this this fifth book that I'm working on now, because I haven't been there yet, and they're just things that you can't get by doing that Google search. You have to be there talking to the people.
Yeah.
You don't even know what questions to ask. You just go there, you're having these conversations, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, this story, it's perfect just to weave in, to add local flavor. Not that it continues, it's not a big, huge plot point, but I'm weaving in this local flavor. And then for that person and for their circle, they're super excited. They're like, no way, this is, he put this in, I remember this conversation. And then you mention the acknowledgments and all that stuff. So I love doing that. And I'm hoping that some of these countries, 2 countries in particular that I want to go to for book 5, open up over because I can still do the story, I can still write it, and by the end of the summer I can go and visit these places and then bring back that local flavor and weave that back into the storyline. So we shall see. But COVID definitely makes it a little difficult to travel.
So your 4th book is already in the can.
4th book is done. Yep.
So the Devil's Hand
Yep.
is
that's
your
4th.
Okay.
Yep.
In
that is
the
4th. And that's April 13th, that one hits, and you'll be getting, this is the galley copy right here, so this is the early edition, which is essentially a rough draft. The hardcover copy will be headed your way as soon as they get
still
to my
in the
house.
James Reece series?
James Reece series, yep.
So break down as much as you can about that book. Fill everybody in where the story left off.
I shall. So the Savage Son hit the New York Times list, which was crazy because it was all grassroots effort. You were the first person. I think I was on one hunting podcast months earlier, and then you had me on before the book even came out. So many people, the first book in 2018, I have no following. I think my first Instagram post was around Christmas of 2017. I'm trying to figuring this thing out. No one knows who I am yet. I'm trying to figure all this stuff out. And you had me on. So people still tell me today that they heard me on that podcast. So thank you so much for doing that. That was huge. And then it started building from there. But I'm really the grassroots side of this was so powerful in that veterans, friends, companies that I've known for years before I had an Instagram account or had a book out, just personal relationships helped build this foundation. So this 3rd book, Savage Son, hit the New York Times list before I was on Rogan, before I was on Tucker, before Chris Pratt said anything about the Amazon series. And I was hoping that all 3 of those people would have me on a little earlier, help out. But now I'm so glad that they did not. I am so glad now because having that grassroots foundation, that modern day word of mouth from veterans, from readers, from tactical shooters, from hunters, telling friends about it, whether it was in person or electronically via a podcast or a post or whatever it might be, that allows me to do what I'm doing now and made this thing a New York Times bestseller. So that was crazy. So point being, this 3rd one that hit the New York Times list has a very, very visceral hunting theme. It explores the dark side of man through the dynamic of hunter and hunted. And for those that remember reading The Most Dangerous Game, most people read it in about 6th, 7th grade. It's a short story, a novella, really. And it has that theme. And I read it back in 6th grade, and I wanted to explore it in the future through a medium of popular fiction in a novel like this. So that was really the basis. So this is for hunters, this Savage Son. It was the one I wanted to write first, but I knew the characters weren't quite developed there. I needed to introduce James through this story of revenge without constraint in this first one. Come out hard-hitting, visceral, primal, have it noticed by a New York publisher, get it published. And then he still wasn't ready. The characters weren't ready for what happened in the 3rd book. Had to continue on this story of redemption, learning to live again, finding this next mission in life, this next passion in life. And I got to tap into transition from the military, mine and other people's. And then it was ready for Savage Son for that 3rd one. So I was so fired up to write that. And I think Savage Son is most people's favorite thus far, but a couple people have read Devil's Hand, and they're very excited. They say it's the best one, and which makes me very happy. But what I explored in this one was things I thought about in uniform and now out, in that the enemy's been watching us for almost 20 years at war. We've been on the battlefield in Iraq and Afghanistan. They've been
before
watching.
that too. I mean, our enemies been watching us since the inception of enemies.
Yes, and I talk about that
specifically,
too.
Yes, in the modern era of warfare.
Yeah. So I take what happened from 1979 up to 2001. It's what did they learn from that? What did Iran learn from that? What did China learn from that? What did Russia learn from that? What did North Korea learn from that time frame? So our response to terrorism. And then 2001 on, now we have a different model, different paradigm. And now we've been actually at war in sustained combat operations, which we hadn't been in since Vietnam. We had flashpoints in Panama, Grenada, Mogadishu, but we hadn't been in sustained combat since Vietnam. So now we're in sustained combat. We're in Afghanistan first, then we're in Iraq, then we have a couple other flashpoints around the globe where we're using those same tactics and techniques and procedures from those two main battlefield, those main areas, and using them in these other places. But what are these countries doing that are watching? What are they essentially? We're playing poker, and they're looking at our cards from the outside. So what are these? And not just those countries, but super empowered individuals. What are they learning? What are terrorist organizations learning? And then what are they applying to their future battle plans? And then as I started doing this research in fall of 2019, so I'm studying infectious diseases. I'm studying the weaponization of infectious diseases. And then COVID hits early 2020. And I'm like, okay.
Slightly ironic timing.
Yep. And now what is the enemy learning from our response to this? Because they're not just like, oh, look at the United States. They're taking lessons from that. And they're saying, oh, look at this. Okay, COVID hits. This is what the United States is doing. Okay, what can I now apply to those other things that I learned? 1979 to 2001, 2001 through today, and now COVID. Okay, what are we learning from that? And then a summer of civil unrest. Okay, what am I learning from that if I'm the enemy? So I get to put myself in the enemy's shoes and look at the United States and think, what would I do if I'm this enemy? How would I take these lessons of these years that we just talked about and apply them to a future battle plan? And then we have a contentious political season, which from the outside looking in looks like some of these divisions are irreconcilable.
Yeah.
And so if I'm the enemy, how am I going to exploit that? How am I incorporating? They're not just looking at these things and going, oh, look at the United States. No, they're taking lessons and they're applying them to future battle plans. So I thought, hey, what would the enemy have learned? What would they apply to future battle plans? And that's what I applied to this book right here. And then I wove in some of the ethics, morality, and legalities behind targeted assassinations. So winding those things together and then putting the protagonist, James Reece, right in the middle of it. So it was interesting because I'm writing it real time as things are happening with COVID, as things are happening with civil unrest, as things are happening with the political season of the last few months. So all that stuff is in the book. And a lot of people that I heard talking, other authors, I heard that they weren't going to talk about COVID. They're going to give people an escape from it because it's such a part of it. But for me, there's a political thriller. It's timely. It's and I couldn't ignore it because the whole premise of the book is what is the enemy learning from us, and they're learning something from these.
We're not putting on a very good show for them. I'd say the past year has been, probably the most effective battle plan against the United States would be to figure out ways to allow us to tear us apart, and they could just sit back and watch.
Well, I had to think about that too because as I started writing, so 2019, I have this one-page executive summary. I turn that into an outline. I start writing. Then all these other things start happening, and I'm like, oh man, does the enemy even need to do something to us? Or are we just going to tear ourselves apart from the inside? So I add that to this.
They
as
could
well.
just fuel the fires.
So
honestly,
we're just going to step back and watch.
Yeah.
So I had to add another element to this that made it timely for them to actually hit us. Because in real life, I'm looking at it, and I'm like, oh, geez, if I'm the enemy, maybe I'm just going to sit back and watch this happen.
Hit the old microwave button for some popcorn and just
exactly
see where
And that was in the forefront of my mind as all these things started happening. So I have to weave that into the novel as well. So I did that through a conversation in here, and I had to make it timely and had to make it important before someone gets to a certain age. They need to see something happen because it's their life's work. And so it kind of forces the timeline. But in reality, they can just sit back and watch this mess that we've created, particularly over the last year.
Yeah. So you have 4 done. How far out in advance do you think when it comes to like character arc or story? I mean, you're probably, or maybe you're not. I have no idea when it comes to writing. I mean, I have never even written anything fictional, but how far out? I mean, I'm going to imagine you spend a good part of your day thinking about these characters, thinking about what you want to write about. Are you 2-3 books ahead of knowing where you wanted to go?
Yep, pretty much. And for me, that helps because I'm not wasting bandwidth worried about the next book. So I know where this one is ending. So the book 5 right now, I know beginning, middle, end. I know some things I need to incorporate in there. I'm writing it right now, but I also know how it ends, which means I know how number 6
begins.
Starts. So now I'm not worried about that. So now it's like, okay, I'm not worried about that. I already have a 1-page executive summary for book 6. I know what that's going to look like. So all my effort is now focused on book 5. I'm not worried about that. So for me, it's important to have a title ahead of time. So I'm not writing thinking, gosh, I hope I come up with a good title. Like I like having that title because that's bandwidth. That's something that that's not now focused on creating the best story that I possibly can. So, and when I started, I wrote 6, 7, 8 different ideas down, and I chose that one that I thought was going to be the most visceral, hard-hitting, the terminal list. Very obvious that had to be the first one out of the gate. Very obvious where it had to go from there to True Believer. Then Savage Son is the one I've been thinking about since 6th grade, so I knew where that was going. And then with this one, I had a few options out there with The Devil's Hand, and I chose to do this research into infectious diseases and weaponization of infectious diseases and what the enemy has learned by watching us, because I think about that all the time, and I thought about it when we were in uniform. So it was a very natural transition. Now I know, because of the storyline, where 5 is going, and I have 6, so now I can focus all my efforts on book 5. So I think every author does it differently, but that's how I do. I know other authors don't worry at all about the title. Once it gets to the editor, and then they have a discussion on it and they figure it out. But for me, I picked all the titles, and it's important for me to have that just because I need to be focusing my bandwidth on that storyline. So, but I think everybody has a different process.
Yeah, I was curious. I don't know actually that many authors. Do you have a desire to write outside of the James Reece series at some point? Will you go into a non-fictional world, or in Pie in the Sky, Jack Carr, the author? Mm-hmm. Would you have multiple different offshoots? What would it look like?
So I get questions all the time about the process, like we just talked about resiliency with our family, with our special needs child. I get a lot of those types of personal and professional questions. So if I do go into the nonfiction realm, what I think I will write about is not our time in the SEAL teams, but write something on the creative process, write something on resiliency, how we've looked at this situation with our family and the things that we did, and how we look at it as making us more loving, compassionate people because of what we have to deal with every day. So things like that. I don't even know what category those fall into, but I do get those questions all the time. So more of a resource, so I can point people in that direction rather than typing out an email again that's very similar to another question that I was just asked in that same realm, or trying to respond to somebody late at night on a direct message or a public one or whatever. Now I can be like, hey, writing process, here's the book, or hey, resiliency, here it is, creativity, here it is. So I might go, if I go down that path, that's probably the way that I'll go. Then there's some young adult stuff that would be, because once again, these kids, they have all those influences that we talked about. We talked about the Grammys. We talked about all these different social influencers that they have. And for me, growing up reading, there weren't all these other electronic distractions. One can only play Atari 2600 for so long as a kid of the 80s. So I had books, and I got a lot of what helped me get through BUDS and life in general, not just BUDS, but life in general, is reading other people's stories of perseverance and resilience and struggle, fiction and non. And I thought about that a lot when we were on the beach in sunny Southern California. I thought of all the histories I'd read of World War II, and I thought of guys in those landing craft ready for that for that ramp to fall, and then rushing across open space, no cover, no concealment, with the enemy on high ground with fully automatic weapons shooting down at them.
Can you even imagine?
And I'm like, I can hold this boat over my head for another couple minutes. I can deal with this instructor yelling at me for another couple minutes. I can do a few more push-ups here. And so I thought about that a lot, and that added perspective to what we were going through then. And same thing with our family. So I do think about those things, but I can only think about those things because I studied them. Because I spent that mat time in the pages of those books. So I might go back and do some young adult stuff to provide a ramp for hopefully a love of reading for people, but also incorporate some of those lessons because there's so many distractions today. There's just, for kids, I can't imagine growing up today, because we had a few distractions. You had a TV, and if you wanted to watch a movie, guess what? You had to go to the video store.
VHS, baby.
And then you had to go in, and you had to then pick one. If it was still there, someone just rented that. Okay, what else now? Now what am I going to get? Then you had to go back to your house.
Well, hold on.
Put it in, press play.
The first thing you had to do, if it had been rented, is you need to go to the return place to see if it had been returned.
Into the return thing, because sometimes.
It's correct. Sometimes
someone just returned
day.
it. Yeah, and it was in the return box. Yep, absolutely. Yep. And did they be kind rewind the sticker on there? You had to, they rewound. So point being, like, that took some effort. Like you couldn't just be like bloop bloop streaming. Done in 10 seconds, 1 minute, whatever it is. No, you had to ride your BMX bike down to the thing. You had to look around. You had to rent it, ride home, and then you had one TV, maybe two, whatever, but you put it in, and then you had to watch it as a family. There wasn't everybody on their device watching their own little thing because that's what they want to do.
Family time where everybody is head down on the phone.
I know, it's tough. That's why I try to take the kids hunting, try to get into these river trips because you're down in the bottom of these river canyons where there's no Wi-Fi, there's no cell service. You don't have that option of being like, hold on 1 second, I just got to return this text really quick. No, that doesn't exist because there's no
visceral physical experiences.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a long way of saying, yes, I'm looking at all these different things in order to expand the readership and do something that provides value for people at the same time. But right now the focus is on this fictional series. But at some point in the future, I'll reallocate some priorities probably and do a couple other things as well. So we'll see. It's all about building and growing and adding value. So right now it's all about book 5.
When does The Devil's Hand come out?
It comes out April 13th. So
what's the best way for people to buy?
So anywhere books are sold, and I like to send people to local independent bookstores because, who knows, they live in a state where there's not getting that foot traffic. Maybe it's still shut down like California or whatever else, and your small local businesses are struggling. So it takes a little bit more effort than just hitting buy on Amazon. But calling your local independent bookstore, even if they're closed, sometimes they're still actually in business and we'll ship you a book or we'll drop them off at your house in some states. So I did a campaign last time to try to push business towards independent bookstores where I did a book plate, which is like a sticker that you sign. And so I had this arrowhead for the hunting theme of Savage Son. And then I had these different bookstores across the country where you could only get these signed book plates from the book if you got it from an independent bookstore. So I did it again this time for The Devil's Hand, and they all sold out. So
sweet.
Yeah, so that was crazy. So I try to push people towards their local independent bookstore, but they're available anywhere books are sold. And then a lot of people like to go a little deep dive on the weapon systems, like we just talked about, that Mark 11, that Mark 12, 301 mag. So I have blog posts on my website. They can hit that blog and they can go back, and my reading lists are on there, and different events are on there, and these different weapon systems that I've used over time are on there to go a little deeper into those, some of the knives, that sort of thing. So that's on officialjackcarr.com. And then I am Jack Carr USA on the social channels, and try to post one thing a day, share that journey with people. And I put some thought into that. So that's on there. And then I have the podcast that started. I was
just going to say, we would be remiss to not discuss your newest endeavor.
Yes. So that's, I think I recorded my first episode in November of 2019.
Perfect.
Because you told me how easy this was. And
I told you how easy it was to set up the device.
Yeah. I'm like, it's not easy. Like people always talk about there's no barriers to entry, low barriers to entry, I think is the term.
From a technology perspective,
holy mackerel.
That's accurate though.
Yeah. So I needed a little micromanagement as far as that stuff goes. So I started recording because I got the same thing that you had.
Rodecaster Pro.
Yes, I got that because you had it. And I'm like, okay, Andy pushes that card in. Okay, he hooked this up. He plugged it in. He pressed the button. I think I can do this. So I got that. I started recording podcasts, and but that next step of actually uploading it to something.
Well, you probably need to edit
somewhere.
it too. Adjust the volume levels, maybe put a filter in there of some kind.
No. Yeah, pressing record, which is now I've come full circle back to just pressing record because Ironclad Media, who came out here and did some stuff with you a little while ago, so they're handling all that side. So all I do is still now is press record, and they do that other thing, all those things that you just talked about. They do that side of it. So that's where I am. So I can just do the recording and then get back to writing or get back to whatever I'm doing for that day. But yeah, the Danger Close Beyond the Books with Jack Carr is out now. My first episode was yesterday. So Wednesdays those come out, and same thing. It's like another way, and we talked about responding to negative comments earlier, and you dive into them every now and again. Sometimes. And every time I see you...
Do you get a good chuckle?
Yes. I'm like, why is Andy doing this? I'm like, oh, because he likes it. Because he likes that. And I'm like, oh, man. But I see you do that every now and again to like maybe the top comment or 2 comments on something that is when someone says something crazy. So I don't do that on the social channels. I thank people. I look at it as a way to thank people that allow me to do this. So I try to hit that little heart button, or I say thank you. I try to do that. Like last night I was up super late after we got back from dinner and all that stuff. I was like trying to get through everything just to thank everyone, because I feel so fortunate that these books are resonating and that people are sharing them with others and talking about them. And I sincerely want to thank everybody. But there'll be negative comments in there, and those get to you. But I don't respond on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook type stuff to those kind of comments because the platforms aren't, I don't think.
It's not a great medium.
It's not a great way to do it. Yeah. Whereas this is. So some of those things that I want to talk about or I want to explore or I want to ask a question about, well, now I can do it on the podcast. So I can take some of those questions and I can have a conversation with someone, or I can just talk about it in a way that is not just one sentence and then I'm on to the next thing and then I go back and then I see that 10 people have now responded with these crazy negative things that I didn't really mean what, they interpreted a certain way, and then all of a sudden they're having a conversation that means nothing about what I meant. Anyway, point being, podcast is that way to explore issues in a way that is more productive, adds value to people's lives, and is done in a way that's productive, which is not necessarily the best way to do it on Twitter and Instagram, just with those one sentences back and forth for me anyway. So that's out now, and it's also a way to expand the readership, and it's something that authors couldn't do 30 years ago. You had to rely completely on your publisher to do everything for you 30 years ago, even 20 years ago for the most part. Well, now you don't. Now there are ways to reach your audience, to expand your readership you're not relying on a traditional publisher. Yeah. So this is part of that journey. So it was supposed to come out in January of 2020.
So you're right on time.
Kind of like my flight the other day that I missed. So that's just how it goes sometimes. But now it's coming out. It's looking professional. They'll be coming out one a week from here on out.
Well, since you wanted to do an episode with me for your podcast,
yes,
what we got to do is we have to wrap this up so we
have
enough time to do that.
Am I going to miss my flight again?
That's up to you. I will get you to the airport in time to make the flight. Right. If you do what the technical term is dicking off at the airport, then yes, you might miss. That is the technical term. Yeah, you might miss your flight. But thank you again for coming up. And it's incredibly ironic that you were here the day that I got my blue belt and my purple belt.
Is that what we're calling it? Ironic?
They were both random days.
Mm-hmm.
I invited you up both of those times before knowing that the Ironman was going to go on.
It's it's okay that you need me here
I don't
moral
need
support.
you here. I want you here.
It's okay.
It's different.
I'm happy to. No, thank you so much for having me up. And I do love watching it because you crushed it when you did your blue belt. You crushed it last night when you did your purple belt. And you're crushing people that have been doing this for a long time out there.
I would not use those terms, but I appreciate that.
It is, it's impressive. It's impressive, that's for sure. So thank you so much for having me up, man. This is awesome. And this has come a long way, by the way.
Wait till you come up next time.
The first time we did it, first time we did it was remote, audio only.
Oh, I hate those.
Audio only remote. The second time we did it at the house.
Yep.
With the roadcaster thing.
Yep.
And then now
we're studioing.
We got some sound dampening blanket things on the walls. We got the American flag here. You have this high-tech equipment. There's all these cameras everywhere. You were professionalizing this thing.
Give it time. I love it. Because there's a new studio coming. I
didn't want to mention that. I didn't know if it was a secret.
It's a while away. It's the first time I've ever talked about it, but there's some plans in the works.
And stay tuned for that because it is the future looks pretty cool up here.
It does. And you will be in that new studio when you come up the next time because we'll definitely have you up for the next book.
Awesome. Brown belt time.
Yeah, I'm going to take. Okay. I'm going to take a few.
Just call me up. I'll be here. If you need me, I'll be here.
Will you? Will you make your fucking flight?
I'll make my flight.
Hard to say.
Hey, I made it in time. Plus or minus 30 seconds.
Fair enough. On that note, thanks, man. Let's we'll take a little break and then we'll get right back in for a little Danger Close.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
Cool. All right, bro. Thank you again to Ladder Life Insurance for supporting this episode. Ladder makes it quick and easy to get covered for life insurance. So check out Ladder today to see if you're instantly approved. Go to ladderlife.com. That is LADDER life.com/clearedhot. Take a few minutes to put into place something that can protect your loved ones in case something happens to you. And that's all I have for this week. See you guys next week.
Understand the west bank of the river? That's A-firm, west bank. It gives me hell. Still give it to me in the grove. Okay, one's in from the north. I've got the west bank of the river. Two's going to give it to you in the grove. Roger, give me that gun run. Right along that bag, baby.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to tune in, whether you're listening on an audio-only platform or you're watching on YouTube. I appreciate that you take the time every week to tune in. People ask me a lot, what can they do to help me spread the word? And the answer is actually embedded in the question. The biggest thing you guys can do to help me if you enjoy the podcast and you think it would be helpful to others is subscribe and share it with other people. And if you have the time, go on to Apple Podcasts and leave me a rating and a review. If you think the podcast sucks, tell me it sucks and leave a 0-star review or the lowest stars possible. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion, you can go to clearedhotpodcast.com. And there is a contact me button right there, which will land in my inbox. And the last thing, if people are interested in helping out, what you can do is fly the old flag. And by that, I don't mean an actual flag, because I don't have any of those. I'm talking about t-shirts or sweatshirts or hats, whatever it may be. Again, clearedhotpodcast.com, click on the shop tab, and hopefully something in there looks like it would be an item you would like to wear around town. And then you can tell people what it is when they ask you. But that is it. The biggest thing I can say is thank you. I truly appreciate it. And until next time, see you.